An entitled worker at a card store literally gave me the worst attitude I've ever seen in my entire life when I was simply trying to order cards in advance. So I decided to get some revenge by literally ruining this guy's entire day by making an order that he would have absolutely no time to complete before I would pick it up, derailing his entire day and forcing him to do something he easily could have done in advance. Here's what I did. Okay, so I just got home from this experience and I wanted to share it because it was kind of wild. As a hobby, I've taken to trading card games like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering to be more specific. I'm not collecting sealed products, but rather I'm usually buying bulk so that I can make multiple decks and play with my family. And this is important because I am often making huge bulk orders that consist of 50 cards or more. There are a few shops near me, and I am fortunate enough to be close to about 5 hobby shops that sell Pokemon and Magic singles. Now, I managed to drag my family into the Pokemon hobby roughly about a year ago. Since then, the process of making an order was to select from their online stock and then check out with a cart. And then when you check out, you're given 2 options. You can either pay in advance for your order or just pay in the store. Well, paying in advance, while it is sensible, has often led to cards being paid for that they just did not have in stock, as in it was mistakenly labeled as in stock but actually was not. And this would then result in a refund system that would take like 2 to 3 days to complete. The issue is that it would be super inconvenient when I would have to wait for like 3 days just to recoup the money. I personally experienced a transaction of a $10 card that needed to be refunded. So I spoke to one of the staff and they told me, well, when you have big orders, it's perfectly fine to call ahead of time, and we can pick the order when we have time. In fact, according to them, if you don't mistreat this process, it works out for everyone. Now, that staff member is awesome, and so for about a year, that's exactly what I did. This process accomplishes 3 things for me. 1, I'm not paying for a product that couldn't be fulfilled. Number 2, I would reduce my time waiting because I called ahead of time by 4 or 5 hours. And number 3, the staff members would have plenty of time to grab the order. I never mistreated this process, and I always came through when I said I would come through. And trust me, this wouldn't be a malicious compliance story if not for the next part. About 2 months ago, me and my family took the dive into Magic the Gathering, and that's because Commander is a blast. This has caused me to start hoarding cards again and making decks for myself and for my family's usage. So I was back into the swing of things again, making 50 single card orders from this shop that I love very much. During my usual 4-hour in advance phone call, I was told, hey, you have to stop calling in these orders. It's store policy to only pull orders that have been paid for, so we won't be pulling your cards until they are paid for. And honestly, I found that weird. I was told otherwise, but I guess I'll have to ask them when I get there. So I get there to pick up and pay for my order, and I tried to explain that this process was something that a previous staff member told me was completely fine, and they even encouraged it. There were 2 staff members, and they both responded again with a very terse and repeated message of, oh, it's store policy. Well, the message was fine enough, but the tone and rudeness had me floored. They told me from now on, prepay for all of my orders, and only then can I come and pick them up. So this is where my malicious compliance begins. I mean, it was clear what they wanted me to do. Prepay and just show up. So a few weeks later, what I did was scroll through their inventory, and I started the process of making my deck look amazing. I proceeded to spend roughly 40 minutes scrolling through their online inventory and adding to my cart with various amounts of the most hollow foil basic land card that I could possibly find under $1. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, these basic lands are pretty cheap. We're talking like maybe 60 cents a piece. They also are categorized by sets and as individual printings. So each basic land has its own set and its own foil print version. So this means that they would need to hunt each land by set and by foil print. I had carded roughly 100 cards. We're talking 100 cards they would need to hunt through at least 40 different sets. They would also need to specifically find the foil only for the basic lands. But even better than that, I gave them an hour to pick the order. An hour, which is definitely not a lot of time, is more than enough to grab this order. Well, when I get there, it was one of the 2 guys that had reinforced the new method of ordering. Even better, he was swamped. He hadn't even started my order. Now, I would have loved to have given him the 4 to 5 hour head start that I would normally give, but it was store policy that I stopped calling in advance and just order, pay, and then show up. So I wait. I ask if they started my order, and he quickly responded by saying, yes, I'm getting to it. And I think that even he knew that this would have been much easier if I had called 4 hours in advance like I normally would. This may be a strange thing to say, but I was very happy that there were 4 cards that were not available for the order. So I had paid for 4 cards that I would never see fulfilled. Now, do you remember the staff member that was awesome? Yeah, he showed up about 30 minutes into my wait, and he asked if I had been waiting for a long time. And when I told him my wait time, just because I had to wait, he had given me one of the tournament participant packs, and I actually pulled a $30 card, which honestly was pretty amazing. Well, the exchange was made, and I waited a total of 40 minutes. 4 cards were missing, and I planned on approaching their social media, or the shop owner itself, and asked for clarification from the establishment on what I should be doing in the future. That will be something I do in the near future, but for now, I feel feel very vindicated. The staff member had to frantically hunt for the cards and even had to tell me that there were cards missing, which by the way are all the things that the previous system completely avoided. Dude, this is so funny to me because this guy was just being a massive jerk for no reason. Seriously, if he had just been like kind or at least somewhat polite in some kind of way, then this could have all been avoided like entirely. Because here's the thing, there's nothing worse than having crappy people working at a job where they literally are not following the easiest path. Yes, it's gonna make you do some work for like a few hours before we pick it up, but if it's a well-reputable customer who buys stuff from you guys all the time, at least have the common courtesy of doing your job instead of trying to scramble for 40 minutes with this awful attitude to boot. So honestly, I love the fact that you got revenge on these guys and showed them exactly why you were trying to follow the rules. Because in my opinion, these guys absolutely deserved it. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I overreacting for canceling the family vacation that I paid for after quite literally everybody complained about what I planned out? Because right now I'm still very hurt about this, even after they said that I ruined the trip. Here's what's going on. I'm a 36-year-old female, and I want to start off by saying that I saved for months to take my family, namely my husband, my 2 kids, my parents, and my brother and his wife, on a week-long trip to the mountains. I booked the cabin, I paid for most of the cost, and I even planned out all the activities. Well, the entire time, no one stopped complaining. My mom said the cabin was too rustic. My brother complained about there being no nightlife. My dad griped about the food options, and my husband was sulking because there wasn't good Wi-Fi. I spent the whole trip driving people around, cooking, cleaning, and trying to make everybody happy. On the 3rd day, after my sister-in-law made a snide remark about how I wasted money on the wrong place, I finally just snapped. I called a family meeting, I told everyone I was done, and then I canceled the rest of the planned activities. I said if they wanted entertainment, they could figure it out themselves. But apparently, now everyone says I ruined the trip and made it miserable. But I feel like they ruined it long before I pulled the plug. So seriously, did I overreact by canceling everything? Because right now I'm still incredibly pissed off. Oh man, if someone acted like that after I spent all this money and was like, okay, we're gonna plan this out, I'm gonna cover the costs and all that stuff, if they then started complaining and being like, wow, you wasted money on the wrong place, I'm pretty sure I would also snap. Like, I can't imagine anybody putting up with that. You mean to tell me you came all the way out here on my dime and you have the audacity to be like, oh yeah, this isn't good enough. Like, dude, there's no way. The original poster is 100% in the right. These people just don't realize that you did all the work here. They're just a passenger on the trip and they're trying to blame you for it not being fun. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? At least attempt to be gracious about the situation. Like, come on. So no, you did not overreact at all. These people suck. And the fact that they're trying to blame this on you all because you canceled it because of their complaining, like, that's also super toxic, and I know for a fact I would never do a vacation with them ever again. An entitled creepy server decides to hit on me instead of getting my order right while I was literally on a date trying to get dinner. So I decided to get some revenge by literally leaving him no tip, leaving him flabbergasted and me incredibly satisfied to get back at this guy. Here's what happened. Okay, so some odd years ago, I was on my first date with a guy my friends introduced to me. Just a getting to know you, are we gonna date or not type of deal at a 24-hour diner, which was really not a romantic dinner for 2. Now, the waiter unfortunately spent more time hitting on me than anything else. At one point, he was perched on the edge of my booth with his arms across the back behind me, and it was honestly disgusting. To top it off, he even somehow managed to get my order wrong. Like, if you're gonna flirt incessantly with some random customer, at least pay attention to what they order. Anyways, this is where things get kinda spicy. Now, I've been told that it is more insulting to leave an awful tip than it is to leave no tip. It says literally, hey, I'm not a jerk who doesn't tip, I just don't think you're worth anything more than that. So I decided after everything this guy did to me that when I was gonna pay, I'm gonna leave a single $1 bill on the table. And you know what? That's exactly what I did. This dude came back with my card, again, perched on the edge of the booth, and actually said to me, wait, only $1? That's it? Don't I deserve more? But in a rare moment of boldness, the likes of which I have never attained again, I said to him, oh, my bad, I must have dropped that. And then I put the dollar right back in my purse. Now, this wasn't one of those situations where everybody clapped and applauded what I did, because it was literally midnight, and I'm pretty sure the only people people there were me, my date, and the waiter, and presumably the cook. I don't remember what my date thought of my response, but we did date for most of the year, so it couldn't have been too off-putting to put this waiter in his place, because this guy absolutely deserved it. Oh man, that's so weird and creepy that guy was literally hitting on you the entire time. Like, I don't know about you, but when I did like customer service and when I was a waiter myself, if I ever saw a man and a woman sitting together eating dinner, it would probably be pretty safe to bet that they're either a couple or they're like on a date or something. Like maybe on the rare occasion it's like a brother-sister situation or some kind of like family member, but more times than not it's someone who's like on a date with like a significant other or someone they're getting to know. So the last thing on my mind is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pick this chick up, watch me flirt with her. Like dude, what is going on right now? You need to be professional and do your job. So I honestly love the way the original poster handled this. I love the fact that they didn't give anything in terms of a tip to this guy because he was being incredibly creepy. Like honestly, there's no good excuse for that. His behavior was completely wrong, and in my opinion, he absolutely deserved it. Am I the jerk for asking my friend's wife who's staying with us to please take down the scented plug-in she's put up all over the room that she's renting from us? Because literally, it's made my house smell incredibly bad, and I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong for telling her to stop. Here's what's going on. Okay, so my wife's friend, who we will call Melissa, is staying with us for a few weeks while she sorts out her life. We have a large home, and we are very happy to have house guests. She's leaving her husband after 25 years of marriage because she wants to move to Los Angeles and work at Disneyland. This sounds like the plot of a bad sitcom, but I'm afraid it's actually real. Both she and her husband are equally culpable for the failure of their marriage and really bring out the worst in one another. In fact, their relationship has been in a state for as long as I've known them. The problem is Melissa showed up with an arsenal of room scents and sprays and plugins. The smell has completely taken over the hallway, the family bathroom, the office, and even down 2 flights of stairs into the foyer drawing room and the living room itself. It's strong, it's nasty, and it's made of and smells like all the chemicals that we avoid. Now, as a sidebar, we've been cleansing ourselves of chemical nasties and have curated our home to smell clean and subtle. It's part of what makes it feel like home, but now it's just starting to smell like teen spirit, if you know what I mean. Melissa is genuinely lovely and in a vulnerable spot, and I don't want to make her feel unwelcome, but it's our house, and this is something that we've been intentional about. However, outside of our personal feelings about plugins, it feels really out there to rock up into someone else's house and then decide to bring your own plugin scents to totally change the smell of the house. I mentioned how strong the smell was, assuming it was a room spray, and how it was overtaking every room. And she said to me, yeah, the plugins are pretty strong. And I was so shocked that I literally just asked her, can you please remove them? And I did this in a sensitive way. I said to her, hey, those room sprays are pretty strong. Would you mind keeping the door closed if you're using them? But when I said this, I honestly spiraled when I heard the word plugins, as in she has more than one. My wife told me that I was being a jerk for making her uncomfortable when she is going through a lot right now, and basically saying that I was over the line by asking her to stop. But I was incredulous that she thought it was okay to change the scent of our house. So seriously, am I the jerk here? Because right now I really just don't know if I'm in the wrong. Okay, honestly, I don't think this is that big of a deal, and I don't think you're in the wrong in my opinion. Like, you have every right to be like, yeah, this is making the house smell weird and I don't like this. And sure, you probably could have like just told your wife and she could have talked to her, but I mean, why should you have to wait for that? This is obviously bothering everybody, and it's like, well, wait a second, I shouldn't have to go through my wife to do this. Now, in terms of an update, it looks like the message was taken loud and clear, and Melissa has taken down all the plugins. So I guess in the end, it did work out. But when it comes to the initial question, absolutely not. I don't think you're the jerk. Because I agree with the original poster. I think it's very intrusive to do something like that in someone else's home, and honestly, that just really was a bad call. My entitled boss went out of his mind by starting to micromanage me in a way that is really frustrating. So I decided to get back at him by following the letter of the law from our company handbook, doing things exactly as they're written, which he demanded from me, in such a way that literally derails the entire company and brings everything to a screeching halt. And I've honestly never felt better about teaching anybody a lesson in my life, because this guy never messed with me ever again after that. Here's how it all went down. So I work as a part-time office assistant for a mid-sized company. A few months ago, my manager, let's call him Dan for the sake of the story, started micromanaging me very hard. I'm talking clocking me for being 2 minutes late from lunch, criticizing my font choice and emails, and most annoyingly, calling me out in front of others for not following the company handbook to the letter of the law. One day after he publicly scolded me for using a blue pen instead of a black one, which yeah, he seriously complained about that, I decided to give him exactly what he wanted: complete and total compliance with the handbook. The next morning, I walked in at exactly 8:59 in the morning because, as you can probably guess, Yes, the handbook says the start time's at 9 o'clock, so there's no way I'm gonna start even a second earlier. The handbook also says to use formal titles, so every email started with like this really super formal introduction, including for my coworkers that I've known for years. The handbook also says all internal documents must be signed and dated, so I signed and dated every single sticky note. The handbook says all meetings must be scheduled 24 hours in advance with agenda attached, so I declined his spontaneous quick chats until proper agendas were sent out. The handbook also says that lunch is 60 minutes, not 59 or anything more or less, meaning that I left my desk at 12 o'clock sharp and I didn't return until 1 o'clock on the dot. The handbook also says to copy to the human resources manager for all work disputes. So as a result, human resources started getting everything, even when Dan asked me to reprint a file. Within 3 days, everything slowed to a crawl. He had to answer to human resources twice for urgent emails I copied on them. In fact, projects backed up because he couldn't get me to bend even a little bit. On Friday, Dan called me into his office clearly frustrated. He said to me, "Look, can you just do your job without making everything so rigid?" But I responded to him by saying, "I'm just following the company handbook like you asked for." He then sat there silently for a good 10 seconds before he said to me, "All right, maybe we can be a little bit flexible moving forward." And ever since then, there's been no micromanagement. He barely looks my way and my work life has been blissfully quiet. Dude, I love this so much. I hate managers who micromanage you. That drives me up a wall, and as someone who dealt with that in my previous job, holy crap, it is the worst. If you've never dealt with it, then you're like so lucky in my opinion, because this really will like derail your entire career. It'll make you hate your life, your job. It'll make you second guess literally everything, because in my opinion, it's like this really like lukewarm version of gaslighting where they're basically trying to be like, yeah, you're not doing anything right. Even the small things are wrong. And it's like, dude, I don't know what you want from me. I'm doing the best I can and I'm literally doing what everyone else is doing. And if you micromanage the rest of my coworkers, I guarantee you would see like the same type of stuff. Like no one's perfect at their job. Like someone's gonna make even like minor supposed mistakes, even though like clocking in a minute early or late is not like a big mistake in my opinion. So yeah, I love the fact that you got back at this guy and you put him in his place by literally following the rules, because that sent a very clear message that the way he's acting is incredibly annoying. My entitled coworker keeps stealing pizza as well as several items from the office that he literally doesn't need, causing him to freak out and scream at me about this when I finally confront him, which honestly is one of the weirdest situations I've ever been in my entire life. Here's what happened. Okay, I want to start off by saying that I work in a weird sales job and I've been here going on like 33 years. The ages in the office goes from like 20 all the way up to 90. Also, when people work together for 40 years, everybody knows everything about each other. It really is gossip central, and I feel like I work in a geriatric high school sometimes. We order lunch for the office at least 2 times a month, and it's usually pizza or sandwiches. We have a few people with dietary restrictions, so we order kosher, gluten-free, and vegan. I mean, I'm making sure that everybody's covered. Since I never know how many people are going to be in the office, we always order extra, and there's always leftovers for people to take home. Since the specialty food is very expensive, we keep that at reception. Last week, I heard someone arguing with a receptionist, and he was literally trying to take the specialty food, which was definitely not ordered for him. When I tried to interject, he started screaming at me, telling me that there's more than enough specialty food and that there's no reason why he can't have it. I then calmly explained to him that this was ordered for the people who need the dietary restrictions and that there is more than enough pizza for him to take home. Now, this guy was literally screaming at a level I can't even describe considering it's about crappy pizza. Well, like every other gossip item in my office, absolutely everyone wanted to talk about him taking pizza. Unfortunately, the whole office knows that this gentleman packs pizza in a travel cooler all before anyone has actually eaten. He wraps it in tinfoil and then takes it home. Like this guy's been doing this for years. This is not a money issue, by the way. He's just super cheap despite the fact that he's quite well off. The next day, I tried to discuss with him in his office with the door closed that he couldn't talk like that to anybody and explained the specialty food was ordered for people who have dietary restrictions. But once again, he starts screaming at me that there's more than enough specialty pizza and that there's no reason why he can't have it. Now, I haven't lost my temper in the office in over 8 years. I do my best to be calm and even tone it down at times, but it just kind of came out of me like hot lava, because right then and there, I started screaming back at this guy, saying that the entire office knows that he's stealing the pizza and that he has got to stop. He's more than welcome to take pizza home after everyone's eaten. Well, he was quite shocked that the whole office knows, and it really seems odd that he would be surprised considering how he whips out aluminum foil to wrap up the pizza every single time. The next morning, he asked to speak with me, and then he actually begins to cry to tell me he's sorry and that he doesn't know why he does it and that he will do better. Now, I honestly at this point felt awful. I really felt like 2 inches big. That's not who I am, and I really need to do better. And for the last week, I've been just a mess. I feel terrible that I yelled at him, and I just kept telling my boss that maybe I should apologize again. Well, my boss called me last night to tell me that he caught him stealing paper towels off the cleaning people's cart last night. Like he was literally loading paper towels in a big bag. So needless to say, I no longer feel bad, and my boss even gave me the day off. Because this entire situation is honestly making me think that this guy is out of his mind and there's nothing I could do to help him. Dude, that is some funny stuff right there. That guy was completely full of garbage. He came to the original poster and was like, "Sorry for yelling. I'll try to be better." And then he goes behind everyone's back and steals paper towels. And mind you, this guy's loaded apparently. He's doing quite well for himself, as the original poster said, and like he's not really got any problems going on. So that's weird in and of itself. But also, in my opinion, and this really is how I feel, if someone's gonna yell at you and you've given them chances to be a normal human being and calm down, then I just would not feel bad about returning exactly the energy they're giving me. Like seriously, that kind of energy is so weird, and I just cannot stand when people do that crap. Because think about it, you're just asking them not to eat pizza. You're not being mean and you're not being weird about it. You're just saying, hey, don't do this anymore. Please stop taking the pizza that other people need. And this guy just starts freaking out and screaming at you like, dude, what is going on right now? So personally, I'm kind of glad that you yelled at him because this guy absolutely needed to be shut down.
My boss ruins my dream job, so I expose her medical leave scam to HR. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. First, some backstory. In the early 2000s, I worked for an overpriced CD store. I really liked my job aside from one coworker, Karen. We just didn't get along. I made the best of it, but she was a borderline bully. Of course, she gets promoted to keyholder and proceeds to turn into a full-blown power trip bully. She made my life miserable. And a job that I previously loved, I couldn't stand anymore. I made a formal complaint that made its way to HR, but I was done working there, which was her goal. Of course, when HR investigated my claims, they found she and the assistant manager were dating. Oops. And she was moved to another store since fraternizing was against policy. Apparently, she didn't like that store and quit. A few months later, I was happily working at defunct bookstore. And who gets a job at the defunct bookstore at another mall? Karen. Over the next few months, she proceeds to do little things to annoy me. Like hanging up when I would call their store for a customer, or leave me on hold forever. Of course, I would get in trouble for not effectively handling the customer with their needs. About 6 months into the job, I heard through the grapevine of store gossip that Karen had been injured in a car accident. Apparently, she'd hurt her back and went on medical leave. She couldn't stand for more than 10 minutes at a time without excruciating pain. This is important. She was on indefinite leave, and her store couldn't hire anyone to replace her while on medical leave, leaving them short-handed. And I knew her manager was really annoyed after a few months. 2 months later, a few friends of mine and I decided to go play pool. A former coworker, Rick, from the overpriced CD store was there. "Man, you weren't here last night. It would have been a reunion. Karen and assistant manager were here playing pool." Karen was playing pool? Oh yeah. They come in every Wednesday night. Really? That's interesting. Every Wednesday, huh? How long has this been going on now? A few months now. Yes. For the entire time she was on medical leave, Karen was out playing pool once a week, not at home in debilitating pain like she claimed. The next day, I went to her defunct bookstore and asked to speak to the manager. I told him all about her weekly pool sessions and encouraged him to be at the pool hall the next Wednesday night to catch her in action. That Thursday, she was fired. The last time I saw her, she and her friend were attempting to follow me home from work. I called the police and led them into the police station where they told her to leave me alone or be arrested. She stayed away from me after that. That's one of the worst feelings in the world. When you finally think you're done with that crappy coworker and move to a new job, just to have them move to the same company a couple months later. For those that have worked in retail, they probably know that this happens more often than you'd think. You get experience in a certain field and of course are going to end up looking for something similar. The problem is, that crappy coworker is also going to be doing the same thing. In this instance, it really sounds like they were going out of their way to make our original poster miserable. I mean, I get why they'd be upset considering our original poster's the reason they got fired in the first place, but still, do you really want to go poking at that? They already made you lose your job once. You want to go 2 for 2? That's what ended up happening in this case. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Karen thinks I'm too young to have tattoos and demands I cover them in public. I'm a 29-year-old disabled female, and I look a lot younger than I am. My personality is what you might call young, which might have something to do with my appearing younger to others. I suffered a spinal cord injury and brain injury when I was 17. My spinal cord injury is obvious, as I'm in a wheelchair. My brain injury, on the other hand, isn't quite as obvious. Most people can't tell that I'm brain damaged, as I talk and act relatively normally. But my personality is eccentric. I can act normal when I'm out shopping or going to doctor's appointments and things like that. But around friends or talking to strangers and meeting new people, I'm a bit of a goofball, which probably plays a part of me seeming younger than I am. But my physical features look much younger than I am also. Up until I was 28, I was being mistaken for 18 or 19. This happened when I was 28. I have 8 tattoos, all of which have a meaning about my life. The lily on my chest is about the sister I had that died before I was born. The spider on my arm is about me overcoming my fear of spiders. My phoenix tattoo is about me going skydiving in 2016. I have a fairy on my shoulder, another flower on my chest, and a few other smaller tattoos on my arm. That's not to say that all tattoos should have a meaning, but that's just me. When I'm wearing long sleeves and a high-neck shirt, you can't see any of my tattoos. In summer, however, they're out for the world to see. None of them are offensive in my opinion, and I often get compliments about them. And then I met a Karen. It was a summer day and I was downtown doing some shopping, wearing a 3/4 sleeve shirt with open shoulders, making all of my tattoos visible. It was hot as heck outside, so I just wanted to finish my shopping and get back home to my aircon. And then it happened. I was in a grocery store grabbing a few things I needed when I got the feeling that I was being watched. I looked down the aisle and saw a middle-aged woman with what I now know to be a Karen outfit staring at me with a face that would make Dolores Umbridge uncomfortable. I just smiled at her and went on with my shopping. "You should really cover those. It's not appropriate to have them out like that." I started looking on my body, not knowing what she was talking about. Did I have a wardrobe malfunction I was unaware of? Huh? Excuse me?
Your tattoos. Don't you think you're setting a bad example? I mean, it's bad enough that you have that many tattoos at your age, but flaunting them like that? Show some respect.
What? My age? What are you on about, lady?
You're too young to have that many tattoos. You should have them covered in public.
How old do you think I am? I'm 28, lady, and it's too flippin' hot to cover anything. Not that it's any of your business. The look of shock on her face grew even stronger as she heard me talking, which I guess made me seem even younger in her eyes.
Don't you lie to me, young lady. Show me some respect.
Trying to avoid the confrontation, I said, "Whatever, lady. You have yourself a good day. Maybe pull that stick out of you while you're at it. Bye." And I left the aisle, hoping that that was the end of it. The lunatic trailed behind me for a few minutes after that while giving me a death glare the whole time. But thankfully she lost interest pretty quick and I lost sight of her. That was the weirdest interaction I've ever had with a Karen, or with anyone for that matter. I don't know if I should take that as a compliment that I look younger than I am, or be insulted that I act like a kid. Either way, I like the way I am, and wouldn't change it for some jerk. Yeah, this lady really just needs to mind her own business. You're allowed to have as many tattoos wherever you want them as you see fit. It's got absolutely nothing to do with her. I don't understand how you're gonna call someone out over their body in public like that. Like it's your place to judge the rest of the world and tell them what's what. I agree with our poster. It sounds like she's just gotta stick somewhere uncomfortable. Maybe you deal with your own issues and stop worrying about everyone else. Food lady denies us food even though our dad is her boss. I recently called my dad, who's a fitness trainer, kickboxer, and life coach, to catch up and chat, when we recalled an event that happened several years ago. The memory just hit me, and realized I was too young at the time to understand exactly what happened. But adult me gets it now. When I was maybe 11 or 12, my dad took me and my two teenage brothers, maybe 14 and 16 then, to this massive place that I think was some kind of fitness expo. I remember this orange, mile-long jogging track inside that circled the room, several areas to exercise with top-notch workout equipment, and a swimming pool area that would moisten Michael Phelps' wettest dreams. I also remember this huge room with more workout equipment with a big enclosed space in the epicenter of the room with a kind of stage inside. It was hard to see clearly on the outside, like for privacy reasons, and so the trainees are less distracted. Come to find out, it was where these exclusive training classes were taking place, and possibly recorded for people to train at home, but I could be wrong. With some house music bumping on the speakers that would make anyone want to get up and get down. Man, I miss 90s house music. Check it out if you're unfamiliar. You won't be disappointed. Since my dad was one of many star trainers attending, my brother and I received guest lanyards, which allowed us to roam the place if we wanted. Our parents raised us well to be responsible and behave in public, else it meant our butts when we got home. The only thing was, we weren't allowed to use the equipment. No biggie. It was the same rule when he took us with him to one of the fitness centers he co-managed over the years, so that was nothing new. Dad introduced us to some of his clients and fellow instructors, many of whom recognized us as our dad had our pictures on his desk and talked about us often, especially me, as I resemble him more than my mother. I remember some saying I was such a pretty girl in my puffy winter coat. Being the super shy type, I reacted as you might expect. But I still knew when to say thank you, especially when Dad was so proud to introduce his kids. As the time for my dad to start his class in that dope AF enclosed space grew closer, he told my brothers and me that if we got hungry to tell the clerk to put anything we want on his tab, and he would just pay for our food when his class was over. We weren't greedy kids and knew not to overindulge, so the trust was there. Pretty much everyone in this place knew my dad, so we just had to drop his name to the clerk when we were ready to eat. He gave me a kiss, gave my brothers the usual look out for your baby sister, and left to be awesome. The place where we wanted to get food had the best view from the third floor. This ginormously wide window, which did my fear of heights no favors, let us see pretty much everything on the main floor, including that jogging track. It felt like being in one of those VIP boxes at a sports event that lets you see everything. Now, the clerk selling food and drinks wasn't at the counter when our dad first brought us in, so we decided to wander, which is what led us to the meat of this post. My brothers and I gave ourselves a tour, careful not to get lost as this place was as big as a super mall. Eventually, we got hungry. We made our way back to the kitchen area, and this middle-aged Asian woman was behind the register. She greeted us without a smile while we surveyed the healthy goodies in a glass display for what we wanted. My brothers told me to pick something first, and they did the same. After the lady clerk said our total, we told her who our dad was, and said that he said to put it on his tab to pay after he was finished training. She said something along the lines of, "He's your dad?" We told her yes. Remember, she didn't see us come in with him earlier. She told us no, rather coldly too, and that unless we pay for everything ourselves, we weren't getting anything. My oldest brother told her we couldn't pay, hence our dad suggesting the tab option. She just cut my brother off and told us to go away. And no, we couldn't show her a photo as proof because camera cell phones weren't quite a thing yet. Disheartened, we just sat at the table across the room and watched everything outside the window. We even kept track of specific people going along the mile-long track for who made a full circuit the fastest. Kinda made a game of it while we talked about other things. While we sat waiting, I glanced occasionally at the lady clerk, who I swear could open for a circus with the daggers her eyes were throwing at us. I realize now that she was probably keeping an eye on us in case we tried to steal or something. In my job experience in recent years, I understand keeping an eye for suspicious-looking people is part of any job description, and my brothers were really tall. But that didn't excuse the lady clerk's cutthroat tone and crappy attitude, as if we were known delinquents. Over an hour later, our dad finally came back, sweating so heavily that he looked like he just stepped out of a pool, and the lady clerk said hi with a big smile. My brothers and I went up to him, and the first thing he asked is if we got food. We told him no and explained why. My dad went up to the counter to the lady clerk, looking like she forgot to cancel her Amazon Prime trial a day too late, pulled out his wallet, and told us to order what we wanted. I could hear the told you so on my brothers' faces. I'm paraphrasing their exchange as it was well over 15 years ago. "This is your dad?" "Yes." "Are these your children?" "Yes." The lady clerk gasps audibly, takes a good 5 seconds to get her jaw off the floor, and starts to profusely apologize while my dad, a tallish black man with a shaved head, small hoop earring, and the physique that puts upscale nightclub bouncers to shame, gives her Keanu Reeves levels of kindness and understanding while she's all but kissing his butt, while getting ours and now dad's orders. She even threw in some free oatmeal raisin cookies for the trouble. My brothers and I are like, sweet, thanks. My dad bid her a good day and we left. My dad is a boss in more ways than just his job title. Okay, so for this one, I really don't feel like we have a jerk scenario. You have a lady who's doing her job and a couple of kids come up and want free food, saying that this person's their father. You have no proof of that. You can't just give it to them because they say so. This sounds like it was a rather big event, so she's not gonna know any better. I feel like I really can't blame her for just doing her job. And dad was super cool about it. Like I said, I feel it's an understandable situation. Thankfully, dad understood that as well. I tricked my mom into finally admitting that my cooking was good. I've been enrolled in a cooking school for over a year, and my mom, she's never been supportive. Mostly because I dropped out of a nursing program to get into a cooking school. She's always making snide comments about how I should have been a nurse or a lawyer, or how I'll only ever be a subservient housewife with this. And when I do make something, she always criticizes it. She's like Gordon Ramsay or something.
Oh, too much salt. It's undercooked. It looks like crap.
Even though pretty much everyone else says the opposite. She's looking for any little thing she can critique about my cooking. She keeps telling me I can't cook and need to get into a real career. I've cooked 3-course meals for the family, and they always get positive reviews, except for her. She had a party for her work friends. I made a whole tray of my specialty take on homemade meatballs, a recipe I conceptualized myself. My signature dish. Everyone kept going back and getting more. So many that they ran out. I asked my mom what she thought. She said,
"They were drunk. They couldn't taste anything."
So I figured if I wanted to get her to compliment my cooking, I'd have to trick her. I cooked her a meal, one of her favorites from scratch. Her biggest weakness that she can never resist. I dressed it up to look professional and put it in a generic to-go box, and had my boyfriend take video of me preparing it, start to finish. I called her and told her that my boyfriend and I were eating at this diner that doesn't exist. Made up a fake name for it and everything. I told her that they have her favorite meal, and asked if she wanted us to bring her one. Of course, she said yes. I brought the dish and told her more about the fake diner. She started eating it and complimented how good it was. She commented on how she wanted to go there and get another one. After she was almost through with the meal, I asked her for her honest opinions, so we could write a review on Yelp. She went on for 10 minutes about how great it was, and then I sprung it on her, that I was the one who cooked it. Her tone changed. She put the fork down and said she was lying, that it tasted like crap. My boyfriend showed her the video. She Googled the restaurant and it didn't show up. All of a sudden, she started pointing out flaws with the meal, like how there was too much sauce and it was really spicy and burned her mouth. I asked her why she finished almost the whole thing if it was so spicy. She didn't say anything, so I just asked her if she was ready to admit it. She said no, so we left, but I spotted her eating it from the other room. I asked her again, and she laughed and finally told me yes, that I'm a good chef. So after a year of doubting if I was a good chef and holding back my dreams, she finally admitted it. What's wrong with this mom? Come on, support your kid. She's doing a really good job at cooking, and you're gonna sit there and tell her, no, she's not? I get that you felt she might have been able to do something better in your eyes, but she's doing really good at what she's doing now. You're really gonna take that away from her? You're really gonna try and bring her down? That's just a really crappy mom right there. You shouldn't have to work so hard for her approval. If I were you, I wouldn't be giving her this much power going forward. My boyfriend's mad at me for ruining his favorite hiking trail because I absolutely had to go pee. I'm a 22-year-old female. My boyfriend, 24, is an avid outdoorsman. He grew up camping and hiking often. I, on the other hand, did not. I think I went camping once when I was a little kid and sat in my grandma's RV pouting the entire time. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 6 months, and as our little anniversary present, my boyfriend wanted to take me to his favorite hiking spot. We live in a warmer state, so hiking this time of year isn't abnormal. I was a little nervous about it, but agreed because I definitely see him as the person I'm gonna marry, which means adapting to his lifestyle as well. So we went on a sunrise hike up a mountain that was a little over an hour away from us. The hike was just over 3 miles total, and wasn't too difficult for beginners. Before going, my boyfriend gave me the safety rundown and pushed that I drink a ton of water. When we got to the trailhead, I needed to pee slightly, and mentioned to my boyfriend finding the bathroom at the beginning of the trailhead, which I believe to be just around this little hill. He brushed it off though, and suggested we keep going so we don't miss the most beautiful part of the sunrise. So I agreed. During the first half of the hike, my boyfriend kept pushing for me to drink water, to the point where I felt like I was gonna throw up, and my bladder felt like it was gonna explode. When we got to the best part of the hike, we sat there for a few minutes before I mentioned heading back down, because at this point, I really needed to find that bathroom. My boyfriend insisted we stay for a few more minutes until I finally dragged him up. Listen, I've never peed outside in my entire life, but I must have drank so much water my bladder just couldn't take it. Before we even made it back down, I knew I was about to pee my pants. I kept mentioning to my boyfriend, and he kept comforting me, saying it was okay and that I was gonna make it. Unfortunately, I could not make it. I apologized profusely, but told him I had to duck behind a big rock a little ways off the trailhead to pee, or I was gonna pee my pants. He was angry, scoffed, and huffed, so I asked him to stand watch, but instead he just stood by the trail, angry as ever. And to make matters worse, an older couple that was cutting through some of the bush walked right by me, but didn't say anything. So yeah, my boyfriend is understandably furious with me, not only for exposing myself on our hike, but also for rushing our beautiful view. This is his favorite hiking spot and I ruined it. I feel terrible, but I also feel like it was something that I couldn't control. Am I the jerk? Okay, we're 1 year in and this is how he's acting. That confirms it. Time to ditch him. All you asked for was for a minute to go pee. Yeah, you're gonna be rushing everything along the way because you've been stating the entire time that you need to eliminate that bodily function. If he had given you 30 seconds or a minute along the way to go do what you needed to do, none of this would have been an issue. It's not your fault for having to go pee. A boyfriend who's gonna get legitimately upset about this is not worth the investment. My dad's wife thinks if she demolishes the house, he'll have no choice but to remodel. Instead, he just divorces her. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I've had a very rocky relationship with my father. He was a very emotionally abusive man who blamed all of his issues on everyone else in his life. I haven't had much of a relationship with him as an adult. But boy did he meet his match with his third wife. They met in 1999 on ICQ through the random meet feature. At the time, they were both married to their previous spouses. The four of them started an innocent enough couple's friendship. But unbeknownst to my stepmother and her husband, my father and this woman had started an emotional affair online, sending inappropriate messages all the time and professing their love to one another while each was going to couples counseling working on their marriage. My stepmother was even telling this woman her deep down feelings about the relationship. A huge betrayal now that she knows this woman was using it against her. When they finally told their spouses, seemingly timed in a way to cause the most pain, they decided she would move from their home in Louisiana to Indiana and start a life together while their spouses struggled to understand what had happened. I've never forgiven my father for the narcissism this took on both of their parts. He just blamed it on my stepmother, convinced I would one day come to accept them as a couple. He was so in denial about how bad the rift between us had grown after years of emotional abuse that they even bought me Christmas presents that year, convinced I would come home. I didn't speak to him for years. I was young and angry, and I needed space. The first time I met her was at my grandfather's funeral years later. She seemed nice enough, but she wanted to hear absolutely nothing negative about my father, and was quick to make snide remarks about my mother and stepmother. She was convinced that my father's ex-wives had put me against him and her, and that she could suck up to me and have the sort of relationship with me that my stepmother did. I let her add me on AIM, but the conversations just became more and more demanding that I just come and have a relationship with him while he's still blaming the women in his life for everything that ever's gone wrong. For the record, my mother and stepmother never said a negative word about him, and encouraged me to have a relationship with him if it was possible. She really believed that she was entitled to have the same relationship with me, a person in their 20s who had only just met her and didn't particularly like her, as my stepmother, a woman who had been there for me unconditionally since I was 8. The last straw for me with her was when she messaged me on Facebook and started chewing me out for not wishing my father a happy birthday on his Facebook profile. I had enough of her nonsense. Told her off, told her to mind her own business, and blocked her on every platform she'd added me on. I didn't speak to her for years, except for a brief exchange at my grandmother's funeral. I didn't have a relationship with her and felt no reason to have to pretend I liked her. I was too busy living my life, going to university, studying abroad, making something of myself, and I didn't need them or their drama. Well, not long after my grandmother's death, they got divorced, and I finally heard the story. See, it turned out my grandparents were rich, and I had no idea growing up. They had managed to save enough money so that all of their children and grandchildren would get a generous inheritance. My father, like his sisters, suddenly found himself in possession of $250,000. In the years between, they had moved from Indiana down to Louisiana so she could be close to her aging mother, and had a modest house in the suburbs of New Orleans. Now, the story goes that my father, who had switched jobs several times in his life and had a questionable amount of retirement income, decided to do the smart thing and invest the $250,000 for his retirement and/or a rainy day. His wife, on the other hand, wanted to use the money to make improvements to their house, including putting a brand new carpet down. He did not think this was necessary, and thought that the carpet they had was fine for at least a while longer. His wife was not happy with being told no, and decided that she was going to make him spend money on the carpet. So one day while he was at work, she ripped up all the carpet in the house, thinking that with no carpet, he'd have to buy a new one. He came home that day to bare floors all over the house. From what I hear, she put on her best surprised Pikachu face when he immediately moved out and basically told her to screw off. They divorced not long after. As the story was being told to me, I looked at the person telling it and said, I never thought I would encounter someone more manipulative than my father, but it seems he met his match. They really did deserve each other. Yeah, both of them really do sound like jerks. I agree that it sounds like they deserve to make each other miserable for a while. The whole story from beginning to end is just full of jerk moves. How they left their spouses particularly doesn't sit well with me. If you're done with the relationship, then that's fine. But playing games like that with someone that I have to assume you once loved is just really, really low. As for the title of the story and why we're here, it's really just petty of the wife, honestly. Just because your husband comes into a little bit of money doesn't mean he's going to spend it on exactly what you want to spend it on. I feel like her dad really did make the right choice here. New carpets are not a priority unless there's a real issue. Trying to force it to go your way is not going to work out. Even if you did get what you wanted short term, you've shown your hand. You've shown what a low piece of crap jerk you are, and how manipulative you can be. Not many people are going to be sticking around for long after that. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Senior manager gets me fired, but I turn things around and get her job and salary. I was hired by a company as an assistant manager, a job I was well qualified for. The owner's rarely on site as he owns several businesses. The company is run by a GM who hired me, but who works mostly second shift and who I therefore have little daily contact with, since I was hired for first shift. I was assigned to Eva for training. Eva was a manager and had been with the company 5 years. I trained with her for a few days, and then I was on my own, though she and I had overlapping shifts and would see each other a few days a week. We were friendly but not close. After a few months, I was doing well at my job and had even gotten some new procedures adopted to help boost sales. Eva began acting resentful. She would correct me for small things and took any opportunity to remind me that she had trained me. It didn't matter to me. She wasn't my boss. I reported to the GM, so I mostly just ignored her. What I didn't know was that Eva was not just tight with the GM, but they had worked together at another place for 10 years before this one. One day at the end of my shift, the GM asks to talk, tells me it's not working out, says I'm still making mistakes at 6 months that I shouldn't be. I ask for examples. A few of them were petty matters Eva had mentioned, but most of them just weren't true. I tried to argue, but it was clear that I was set up. I decided to reach out to the owner since I had nothing to lose. He was sympathetic but said he relies on the GM to run the business and had to support her decision. Then he mentioned that if things hadn't been so bad between me and Eva, it probably could have worked out. That's when I knew she was behind me getting fired from a job that I really needed, really liked, and was making great money. And I vowed to get revenge. I started searching her online info. In less than an hour, I'd uncovered a gold mine thanks to one of those pay services. About 3 months prior, Eva was arrested and charged with a DWI in a neighboring state. The court records showed she had a hearing coming up in a few weeks. That was enough to get her fired. It affects a personal license she and I had to have as management. Per state law, license holders must report criminal charges to the licensing board. And in the case of a DWI arrest, licenses are typically suspended pending trial. I called the owner and told him what I discovered. It was news to him. I guess since it was out of state, Eva was keeping it a secret. Maybe she was hoping to get off on the charges. The next day, the owner called and said Eva was fired. He thanked me for telling him about her DWI, apologized for how I was fired, and offered me Eva's position and salary. He asked me to come in the next morning to meet with him and to cover Eva's shift. I accepted. That alone was sweetly satisfying revenge. But what happened next was the icing on the cake. I got to work extra early, met with the owner and GM, and we all agreed to start fresh. Cool. It was still an hour before opening, and I was in the back of the place when I heard the front door chime. When I came out a few minutes later, Eva was there, tears flowing, begging the owner for her job back. She obviously didn't know I was there, because when she saw me, her whole body seized, and her shocked expression was priceless. I walked right by her, staring her down with a smug grin, and went outside. Eva came out a minute later and wouldn't make eye contact. As she walked away, I said, "Good luck on the 23rd. That was her court date. Yeesh. I mean, I guess she had it coming. I understand her maybe not wanting her employer to know about this, but unfortunately it's the kind of thing you have to report. Not doing so is just going to lead to even worse consequences if they do find out. And if your court date doesn't go the way you want it to, which is highly likely, then that's probably the way things are going to go down. But hey, at least it all worked out for our original poster in the end." Entitled parent thinks they rented the whole park. I'm at a city park with my kids. We've been to this park a bunch. There's this one spot where there's a rocky hill, all tree covered, nice and shady on a hot day. There's a playground at a pavilion at the top of the hill. We get there and I immediately notice loud noises, and I'm having to step over cables and extension cords. Someone rented the pavilion and set up not one, but 3 bounce houses around it. Oh, great. So I have to give the disappointing news to my kids that even though they're surrounded by bounce houses, they can't play in them, since this is a private party. But they're free to go hit the playground. Everyone's cool with it. I sit on a bench as my kids go to town on the fake pirate ship when I hear, "Whoa, hey!" That's when entitled dad, doing his best to imitate the situation from Jersey Shore, walks up to me and informs me that the playground is closed for a private party. I look at him and inform him that the public park does not close for private parties, and it sounds like he rented the pavilion nearby, which is fine. but doesn't give him exclusive use of the neighboring playground. He storms off and returns with a rental agreement and shoves it in my face, telling me to get my kids and leave. Right, so rental agreement is very clearly for the pavilion, all for the grand sum of $35 for 4 hours. How could any sensible adult think that $35 granted you exclusive use of a public playground? Moreover, why is it so important for you to have exclusive use of a public playground? I again point out to him that he rented the pavilion, not the park, and my kids won't go on his bounce houses and won't go in the pavilion, but the playground is fair game for everyone. He begins hurling threats, and I'm weighing just taking my kids and leaving to avoid this jerk. Then I decide I need to take a stand on principle. So I tell him to screw off and proceed to use my phone to find the phone number for the park office. Our county staffs our parks. During the summer months, they employ park rangers who have peace officer authority. I call the park ranger and tell him that there's trouble up at this shady playground and they need to come right away. Sure enough, as I'm getting off the phone, Jerk returns with 2 of his meathead friends to tell me that they're ejecting me from the park. No, you're not. And if you touch me, I'm calling the cops and pressing charges. No anger, no rage. With this promise of action, however, one of them kind of widens his eyes and steps back, saying to his friend to just leave us alone. This guy, for some reason, does not want the police coming, and it's very obvious. The ringleader won't back down, however, and tries his best to get in my face, screaming and yelling. He grabs my arm, and I remove his hand. All of this just as I see the ranger pull up, yell for everyone to step back from one another, and start his way over. This smug jerk shoves the rental contract into the chest of the ranger, telling him that I'm trespassing and he rented this space for the day for his kid's party. Now, normally I don't like posturing by law enforcement, but here it was pretty amusing. You touch me again and I'm gonna arrest you. This is for renting the pavilion. You have use of the pavilion, but the playground is open for public use. Also, your permit doesn't allow you to set up bounce houses. Where did you plug these in? The ranger follows the extension cords and sees that they ran them to nearby public bathrooms. There was an outdoor outlet. It was locked. This dude cut the lock off so he could plug in his stuff. The ranger comes back with the broken lock. Did you cut this lock?
Well, it was like that when I found it.
Really? Because it was intact this morning. So some random person cut this lock and you just happened upon it within the last 2 hours?
I guess.
Long story short, he let them stay and let them keep the bounce castles because he didn't want to ruin a kid's party. He wrote the guy a citation for the broken lock and the unauthorized power use, and banned him from the park for the remainder of the season, after the party. Amazingly, this entire event was lost on my children, who barely noticed anything was going on. I'm glad the park ranger showed up to deal with this jerk when he did. Otherwise, I was gonna have to. I love how this guy has a contract that he's so confident in, but apparently didn't take the time to actually read. I would think it's pretty obvious to the general person that you're renting a space in the park, not the whole park itself. And then trying to bring over a couple of guys to muscle someone out of it? Like, come on, buddy. It sounds like the kids weren't even using the park at the time. So what's wrong with some lady bringing her kid there? This guy just sounds like he's on a power trip. Our original poster did exactly what they should have done. They called the person they needed to call, who came and handled the situation the way it needed to be handled. No unnecessary escalation, thankfully. It's good he showed up when he did though, cause it sounds like these guys were about to get physical. My students thought they could prank me, but I had the last laugh. I spent about 10 years teaching high school humanities at a small private school. For my first 2 years, I didn't have a classroom, just a small office. I would bring what I needed for each class on a cart and go from room to room, depending on which teacher had a prep at any given time. This was incredibly inconvenient, and not being the most organized of teachers to begin with made things difficult to keep track of. There were a group of 11th grade boys who decided to make things a little more difficult for me. They were good kids. We got along well. I coached several of them on the school soccer team, but they decided that since my office would often be empty, It was a great place to play a prank. It was never anything too serious. Things falling over when I opened the door, or things disappearing for a day and then turning up in a different place the next day. Nothing was ever damaged, and I could never prove who it was, even though I knew. My school had mandatory final exams in each academic course. I didn't really think they were necessary, so I would generally make them pretty easy with a lot of preparation. I would give out study sheets and play review games for a couple of weeks before the test, and there was no reason the students wouldn't do well on them. I had approval of admin to do this, as they weren't particularly fond of the final exam rule either. It was a school board policy. A few nights before the offending boys had their exam, I had a brainwave. I created a second exam. Gone were the multiple choice questions and obvious things from the review sheets. In their place came detailed questions about concepts that were briefly mentioned in class. Essay question after essay question. Ambiguous questions with no clear answers. Definitions of words that there was no way they knew. It took a couple of hours, but I laughed the whole time. When the test came, I had the special exams at the bottom of the pile and handed them out to each of the 4 or 5 boys. I told my vice principal what was happening, and he insisted on being present. I started the timer and watched as the boys flipped over their papers. All I could do was try to keep a straight face. Eyes went wide, heads were shaking, panic was setting in, especially as they saw all their classmates flying through their exams. One of the boys raised their hand. "Sorry, no questions during the final. You should be prepared based on your study sheets." I let them go for about 5 or 10 minutes of terror before I gathered the fake tests and gave them the real ones. They all passed with flying colors and never pranked my office again. It was glorious. This one I like. Relatively harmless, no one got hurt, nothing really big happened. Just a teacher kinda having some fun with some students. I know some students can be really cruel with their pranks, so it's good to hear that these kids weren't taking it too far or anything. Sometimes the pranks can get really personal and offensive, and it's not a prank. You're just bullying and harassing your teacher. These kids seemed like it was all in good fun. At least the teacher seemed to think so. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have taken it so lightly and gone about it the way he did. It's always nice to hear when teachers get in on the fun too, that they can still have fun with the kids. School's miserable enough already. We can afford to lighten the mood a little bit here and there. I'm sure those kids were sweating up a storm for those 5 or 10 minutes. At least the teacher was nice enough to end their misery after a relatively short amount of time. He could have let that go on for a while if he wanted to. Theater Karen puts her feet next to my head on my chair, so I give her a taste of my feet. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. I was out to a movie with my friends last night. We come and sit down, and I realize pretty soon that this girl in the row behind us has her feet up on my friend David's seat. She's there with one of her friends. So David turns around and he says something like, do you think you could put your feet down? And I think they say something in response, but I didn't hear it. The feet didn't go down. A few minutes later, David says, "Hey, will you get your feet off my chair? It's extremely rude." And they still don't budge. So I tell David that he should go find an employee and get them to talk to this girl. He does exactly that. And after a couple minutes, an employee comes and talks to this girl. She's obviously pretty peeved and begrudgingly agrees to put her feet down. After the employee leaves, she puts her feet right back up. At this point, I'm ticked off. Why is it so important that you have your feet up on someone's chair? You're just being a brat. So I get out of my seat, walk up 2 rows, sit in the seat directly behind this girl, and stick my foot on the back of her chair and push it forward. They both turn and try and say something to me, but I really can't hear them, since the movie has started by this point. So I just say, just watch the movie. I keep my feet up there the entire movie. It felt like I had done wall sits for 2 hours, but I'm glad I did it. Honestly, at that point, yeah, I don't blame you for trying to do something like this. I'm surprised your friends didn't join you up there and you guys had your feet all over her chair. But hey, I guess one is enough to get the point across. I completely agree with our original poster. This girl was just being a brat. Unfortunately, sometimes you gotta sink to their level to show them how annoying they're really being. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Lady up and leaves her dog with me thinking that my office is a doggy daycare. A while back, I was working in an office that allowed dogs. It was an open floor plan, and since customers never came into the office, we kept the dogs' food and water bowls right by the front door, just because it was the most convenient space and no one else would see them but us who worked there. Of the 6 of us who worked there in the main office area, I was the only one who didn't have a dog. No pets policy at the apartment, and I always felt horribly left out. To make matters worse, across the way was a doggy daycare. One day, a very frantic woman came in and she had an absolutely massive basset hound with her. Usually the only people who come into our office were associates who had appointments with someone working there, but it was rare that they brought their dogs. She ran up to me and said, "Do you work here?" And I said, "Yes, how can I help you?" And she said, "I wasn't sure if you took walk-ins, but I read online I could just drop him off. I tried to call, but no answer." I didn't really know what she was talking about at that point, and I said, "Come again? Who did you call exactly?" Thinking if I could just saddle her off to whoever she came to see, I wouldn't have to decipher her problem. She said, "Well, it doesn't matter now. Look, something urgent's come up and I really need to leave him here. Here's his food he likes and I'll be back in a few hours." And at this point, I wasn't thinking of the doggy daycare. I thought maybe she was just a friend of someone here. I said, "Well, all right, can I get your name, please?" And she said her name and then asked if I needed her to sign anything. And I was so confused at this point, I just said, "Why would I need you to sign something?" And she left almost immediately. So I took Otis, the dog, to the back and showed him to my coworkers, and no one knew the woman or the dog. I was worried she wouldn't come back, but at the same time, my wish for an office dog had finally been granted. And Otis was supremely chill. All he did all day was lie around and drool into his own ears. I just freshened him up every now and then, took him out every couple hours, and he was happy as a clam on a big cushy dog bed we thankfully had an extra of. He just loved attention from anywhere he could get it. At the end of the day, the woman, thank God, came back. She said, "Thanks, you're a lifesaver. How was he?" And I said, "He was a champ." And I was about to say, "But why is he here?" when she said, "Oh, that's a relief. Most kennels say he gets anxious around other dogs. I heard you operated at a much higher capacity. I was thrilled to see you had so few clients in the room at one time. So how much do I owe?" And that's when I realized that she thought we were a dog daycare. Now, I probably should have corrected her, but I loved my day with the office dog, and I did want to get paid for supervising this strange dog all day. I just threw out the number that sounded fair and appropriate. "That'll be $20, I said. She replied, "Really?" in this very high tone, and I couldn't tell if I'd overshot or undershot, but she paid me and left. My coworkers were laughing hysterically when they realized what had happened, and we thought it would just be a good story for the future. But the next week, she came back. She said we were so much more affordable and less overcrowded than her other place that she was happy to use us. I was glad for the company, so just took him. I didn't think there'd be any way she couldn't have at least some idea we weren't a doggy daycare. The whole ordeal was so strange, I just figured, don't question a good thing. I was much younger and dumber then. Not long after, Otis started getting dropped off 2, sometimes even 3 or 4 days a week. I was in heaven. He was such a love, and he made fast friends with the delivery guys and visitors. One day, we took our office Christmas card photo, and Otis was over that day, so we included him, in a Santa hat. It was pretty great. But it turns out Otis's owner was friends with one of our clients, who I guess happened to have the card out on her table, or was kind enough to display it alongside her other holiday cards. Because one day, Otis's owner came in holding the card and walked up to me and said, I can't believe I'm asking this, but is that my dog in this photo? This isn't a dog daycare at all. This is just an office, isn't it?" She said it with a note of surprise, as though she was looking around and putting it all together for the first time. No coincidence that this wasn't the first time she was in some crazy rush either. She was like, "Then who are all these other dogs?" And I explained. I was terrified she was going to demand her money back, or worse, take some sort of legal action against us for misrepresenting ourselves as a dog care business, or complain to corporate or something. Instead, she basically said, "Why didn't you ever say anything?" And I explained we just really liked having Otis around. She stopped for a minute and seemed to be thinking and said, "Is that right?" And I said yes, and told the story of how I was the only one in the office without a dog, so I loved the company. She seemed a little flummoxed or hesitant, understandably, because the whole thing was just so weird. She turned to my coworker and asked if I was telling the whole truth. I don't know why she thought my coworker, also a stranger to her, would be any more trustworthy than me. But hey, strange times. Coworker backed me up. So she said, "Well, I wish you'd said something sooner. Could have saved me a lot of embarrassment with my friend back there. All right, well, I have to get going. See you at 4. And she left Otis. I couldn't believe it. I said, "So he can stay?" And she replied, "Where else am I going to find someone to watch him one-on-one all day for $20? And off she went. Otis stayed my office dog until his family moved away. Luckily, right around the same time I took a new job. I feel like our original poster got really lucky here. They should have said something as soon as they knew what was going on. The moment that lady came back to pick up her dog, you explained the situation. I'm sure she'd be glad just to have gotten the one day with you. But once you continue to keep up the ruse and not say anything, that's where some problems come into play. You're lucky that she didn't want to file any charges or anything. But I guess the way she saw it, you were doing her a big favor. I mean, as long as you're a good person and the dog's happy and she's paying you for your time, then I guess there's nothing wrong with it. You just happen to stumble onto an extra job, I guess. My manager tried to cut my hours without me knowing, so I destroyed his entire business. Nearly 20 years ago, I was a brewer at a brew pub. The owner was a complete lunatic and an utter jerk. Before I was hired, he had already purchased the brewery equipment used from a closed microbrewery. Problem is, it was literally 4 times larger than it needed to be for the size of the place. And to top it off, he was selling big 3 beers too. It was a Pugsley system, brewers will know, but I made it work. Even got the stupid Ringwald yeast to behave. But I only need to brew about 3 or 4 times a month. I've worked at places where we brewed that much a week, so I wasn't needed anywhere near 40 hours a week. And I was salaried, so he decided I needed to work night manager at least 2 nights a week to fill out my hours. That was fine. It was an easy gig. After our first year, he advertised a huge anniversary event with specials on food and drink, food specials, commercial beer specials, and didn't even mention that we made our own, much less put anything on special. Idiot. Not too long after, I got my first vacation in over a year, and he was mad at me for insisting. But life was stressful, not least of which because my mom was in hospice, stage 4 cancer. But her condition was such that she said my wife and I should go. She'll be fine. So we went camping for a week. The day before our trip was to end, we got word that she had passed 2 days earlier. My family didn't know how to reach us. Only she did. We rushed the 6-hour drive home, and on the way, I called my boss and told him what had happened, and that I probably would not be in on Monday as planned. This was Saturday. I found out later from a bartender that he then complained to the chef that I was probably going to want more time off. I did in fact take Monday off, but I went in on Tuesday to do my night manager shift. Now, my mom's wishes were to be cremated, with no embalming. So by the time I got home, she was already cremated. So the memorial service was planned for 2 weeks later, right before Labor Day weekend. There was to be a memorial service Thursday, and the intermittent for the family Friday. So I planned and made sure that the servers were full and I wouldn't need to brew for at least a week. That Wednesday, the boss comes and tells me he wants me to work night shift on Thursday and Friday. Normally, I did Tuesday and Wednesday nights. The intent being for me to make up the time off I'd taken to help my dad out. He wasn't handling it well. He wanted me to come in after my mom's funeral. I flatly refused, at which point he said fine, but I'd have to work a double shift Saturday then. I nearly lost it. I walked away, and after I cooled off, I went back and told him I was no longer going to do the manager shifts, and that I wanted to switch to hourly for brewery work only. He was angry but stuck. He needed me in the brewery. things started calming down. But after a few weeks, I noticed my paychecks were for less than I anticipated. I hadn't been tracking my clock in, clock out very closely, because prior to this, I only clocked in and out so I was logged in to do manager functions. But I happened to have a couple of slips in my wallet, and because I still had manager access, discovered that he'd been altering my hours, eventually cheating me out of around 20 hours in just 6 weeks. And that's when I hatched my plan. I was done with this jerk. Remember that ringwood yeast? Well, in a brewery, you harvest yeast from a fermenting batch to use to brew a later one. And since we were slow, it often had to be stored for a while before it got used. But you had to use it within 30 days. 21 is better. Or else it goes sour and starts dying. Normally, I would take other steps to ensure it stayed clean and healthy, but not the last batch I harvested. It just went into the cold room and stayed there. I stopped going in very often, just logging tank levels to make sure nothing ran out and made him suspicious. I would even go in to make sure he wasn't in that day, and later message him that I brewed, when I hadn't. And I waited. On day 45, after I got the check for the last hours I worked, I overnighted my keys in with a resignation letter. He called me the next day screaming. I told him I knew what he'd done, and I wouldn't be back. I wish I could have seen his face when he went into the brewery cellar and discovered he had empty fermenters, nearly empty serving tanks, dead yeast, and almost no grain. Pity, really. After that, he tried to hire my former assistant, who was working at another brewpub by then because the jerk had forced me to fire him to save money. He laughed at him. He then apparently got an underage son from one of the brewers at a nearby brewpub which he had originally been part of to brew for him, but had to fire him because the kid kept getting caught drunk down in the cellar. So he tried doing it, and I had heard they stopped brewing entirely eventually. About a year after I left, he folded. Staff showed up one morning to padlock doors. Drove through there a few years back. Not only gone, but the building was torn down. I felt like stopping to sow the ground with salt, but I was in a hurry. No, this guy absolutely had it coming. As the manager, that's the one thing you should not be doing is shaving your employees' hours. That's not gonna go over well for you. He's lucky there wasn't a lawsuit involved and all you did was sabotage. If you had gone legal with this, it could have hurt him a lot more and a lot faster potentially. As far as I'm concerned, he kinda got off easy. It's just a really petty move though. Our original poster is entitled to do whatever they feel is best for them. Just because they don't want to be your manager anymore doesn't mean you get to go ahead and start shaving their paychecks. 100% jerk right there. My entitled sister thinks $55 covers 2 months of babysitting. This makes me hurt a little because up to this point, my sister was the only one I could mildly get along with within my family. But I guess she's my mother's daughter, so the entitlement shouldn't have been a surprise. My sister and brother-in-law are both essential, cop and doctor, so they've needed someone to watch their kids now that school's canceled and a lot of daycare services aren't around. And even then, the youngest one had been kicked out at 2 of them, and finding a new one is difficult due to that. So I've been watching these kids 4 to 6 times a week depending on their schedule, anywhere between 7 to 12 hours a day. I was told to wait until they got paid, then told to wait for the stimulus check to come in and they'd pay me for it. At that point, and I do have the text, it was going to be $85 a week, regardless of that 4 to 6 times a week. Well, they got the stimulus check in. My sister gives me $55 and tells me that this was for the babysitting. I told her, excuse me? This wasn't what we agreed on. I was told that I should be grateful because she's been feeding me. No, she hasn't. I bought my own food and tended to have to buy the food that these kids were eating for lunch. I was told it was just like hanging out, having fun, playing video games with my nephews. No, it was not. And she knows her kids better to know that they're little monsters. They're both destructive. It's a hassle since I have to chase them around all the time to prevent them from climbing shelves or from getting out the front door, because these kids were never taught to mind. And when I refused to bring my gaming laptop for the older one to play anymore, I told him specifically if he wanted to play on it, he'd only touch the wireless mouse and keyboard and play it at a desk, but not to touch the laptop. And what does he do after getting bored with the one game he begged me to let him play? Pick up the laptop and run with it and drop it. I screamed at him. Not my best moment. And he had the attitude of a teenage valley girl of, whatever, accidents happen. That's why they're accidents. If it breaks, you can just buy a new one. Of which I told him he would be the one to replace the $1,600 computer. But since that day, he's been a whining bag of crap about me not bringing it over for him to play with. I have to deal with these kids assaulting me all the time and not being able to do a thing about it. These kids are monsters. And the only reason I agreed to do this was because she was my sister and she needed the help. But I was supposed to be compensated for my time away from my own work. I work commission-based jobs at home, but I can't work on it around them as there's no pause for me to do it, lest the younger one would probably run away and get hit by a truck. I know it'll probably be crappy of me to do if I just don't show up for the next few days until they fix paying me what they at least owe me. But on the other hand, I really just don't want to be around those kids. They need to be heavily medicated, and are the poster children for corporal punishment being a necessity. Yeah, these kids sound like a little bit of a nightmare, not gonna lie. If you guys agreed upon $85 a week and you have the text to prove it, I don't see what your sister's trying to pull here. She knows that it's worth more than $55 of your time, especially since you're missing out on your actual work to be there. Then we add on top what you're spending on lunches for them and the $1,600 computer. Surely she understands that it's worth more than $55 to you. Sounds like you're going through quite a lot to try and help her out. It would be nice if she would at least acknowledge what you're doing for her. It's almost like she's playing it off like she's doing a favor for you, giving you time to hang out with your nephews. Like you said, she knows how bad those kids are. She also knows that that's not a gift. I uninvited my son's gay partner from my wedding. I, 49-year-old male, am getting remarried to my fiancée, 41-year-old female, in a month. And the wedding preparations have gone well, except for one issue. My fiancé's family is mostly conservative, and thus not very supportive of same-sex relationships. My fiancé's siblings plan to bring their children to our wedding, and they obviously wouldn't want their kids to witness a gay couple at our wedding, cause then they'd need to explain the situation to them. So we decided to disinvite my son's partner from our wedding so we could avoid such issues. My son is 21 and his partner is in his 20s. I thought my son would be mature about it and understand our side. But instead, he kicked up a huge fuss about it, saying that I'm acting homophobic and embarrassed by him, and that if his boyfriend can't attend the wedding, then he won't either. I feel like he's being really unreasonable, especially because him and his boyfriend haven't even been together for that long. So it's not like he's really entitled to be invited at any family events yet, and my fiancé does take my side. However, my son is insistent that I'm the jerk, and even got his mom to essentially gang up on me about this issue. Yeah, no, I don't like this one. I'm with your son. You making this decision makes it feel like you're backing up what your fiancé's family thinks, and that your son isn't acceptable the way he is. It's kinda gonna set a standard going forward, and the way you just brush it off like it's nothing really shows that you don't understand what you're doing to him. There's nothing else to say here. 100% the jerk on this one. Escort Karen steals my dog, so I hunt her down like John Wick. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. So it all started on Sunday, May 26th. I was flying back home from Texas where I was at my girlfriend's sister's wedding. We had a layover in Vegas before our 1-hour flight back to Sacramento. I land in Vegas and I get reception. That's when my roommates call me and tell me how the door to our backyard gate was busted open, and my beautiful husky wolf mix was missing. That dog is everything to me. She's 3 years old now, and I've had her since she was 2 months. She's been with me through all my breakups, my layoffs, and my evictions. She was my only friend when all my other friends believed the rumors my ex said about me. Anyways, she's gone, and I get home to start doing the usual putting up flyers, offering a reward, and notifying every shelter, vet, and her chip company of her disappearance. I put notices on every lost and found page, and suddenly it starts to go viral on Facebook. A lot of people really wanted to help me find my dog, and I had eyes everywhere. I wake up one day to a Craigslist ad with a picture of an unknown girl hugging my dog with the ad titled Found Husky, sent to me by a friend. So I contacted the ad maker. The lady was nice and explained how she didn't find my dog, but a friend of hers on Instagram found her. She watched her post pictures on Instagram and brag about how the universe brought me this beautiful dog. She sent me screenshots of her Instagram and all the pictures she posted of my dog. She then tells me that she doesn't know her personally, but that she's a fellow escort. It turns out the girl who has my dog is an escort, so she messaged the girl to tell her that she found the owner of the dog. And she fully deletes all posts about my dog and blocks the ad maker. So I think, alright, this is already viral. Game on, lady. I get all the people who've been searching, including my detective aunt, and we make a hunt. I file a police report and they're down to bust the chick. But I have to find where she is and holding my dog for them to do anything, which is pretty useless. I get people to start contacting one another. We found her legal name, all the addresses she's tied to with, including her boyfriend's stepmom, stepdad, possibly dad, and stepmom's info. We even found 2 warrants for her arrest. She was charged with petty theft, hit and run involving property damage, lying to a police officer, and possession of contraband. After I found that info, including her being an escort, which is illegal where I'm from, we had her. I dug up all her info, including emails and phone numbers with her escort phone number. So I call this woman to confront her, and she starts yelling at me about how I'm harassing and threatening her. This is the first time I've ever talked to this woman. She starts going on about how she's gonna press charges on me. She also said she brought my dog to a shelter 2 days prior, and told me which shelter. I confirmed that wasn't true. Meanwhile, I'm gathering all the proof I have that this dog is mine, which is 3 years of time-stamped photos with me and the dog, and the chip information that my dog is registered with, and her being in my name with the chip company. She's told this and still refuses to give her back, saying that she's afraid to give the dog back because I'm threatening her, which I never did and have proof of that. So now she's on blast on Facebook and Instagram and Reddit as well. I'll provide updates later. Update. So I'm not sure what more I can really do. The court fees to even try and get this woman is gonna break my bank. And I already spent over $1,000 trying to find my dog. Then even trying to find and serve her with the court papers may not work, because the cops will only try 3 times before they say, well, you're on your own. And then I would have to hire a private investigator. I'm not sure what to do besides blast her so hard this ends up on every news station and radio station in the Sacramento region. Update 2. Oh boy, check this out. That girl that stole my dog was with another girl when they found my dog. And boy does the plot thicken. They're both escorts. So the girl that stole my dog, let's call her Blonde Thief, and the girl she was with, we'll call her Red-Haired Thief. Blonde Thief left for San Francisco to work. She came home early to find Red-Haired Thief was sleeping with Blonde-Haired Thief's boyfriend. And it gets better. Red-Haired Thief beat Blonde-Haired Thief's butt, which involved the cops and a public police report. Boyfriend was taken to jail for domestic violence, and so did Red-Haired Thief. Now that is public record, I looked up the incident. Sadly, there was no house address when I looked it up. I'll keep you guys posted. Final update. The Red-Haired Thief contacted me and told me the Blonde-Haired Thief took my dog to her dad's house. So I went detective and looked up who her dad is. I got his legal name, Facebook, and phone number. I get a car with a beefy friend of mine and drive 1 hour to Valley Springs to where her dad lives. We pull up to the property and there's my dog running up to the fence to greet me. I open the gate and she tackles me. I put her in the car and call the cops. They arrive and do their hardest to get him to answer the door, but the police chalk it up to him not being home. They take my statement and I explain everything down to each fine detail, including the escort in question having a record. They said they'll be catching him, and I'll be pressing charges for animal endangerment and grand theft. She'll also be adding a 3rd warrant to her record. So glad that's over, and my dog is so happy to see me again. The next day, I get a message from my friend. Turns out the thief sent her a message on Instagram about contacting the police over me harassing her. My friend then asked her if she realized that the owner came to her dad's house and took her dog back while the police watched it happen. That I had told the police that I was pressing charges on her and that they're coming for her. And to enjoy jail, the thief flipped. She started threatening my friend and saying she's gonna fight her, calling her all kinds of unsavory names. In all seriousness, hasn't this jerk had her butt beat enough this week? Yeah, if someone stole my dog, I'd be hunting them down too. Especially when you have an idea of who did it and have some clues. There's no way you're letting that go. Like you said, you had everybody in your area on your side, eyes open looking for this dog. It sounds like even the thief's own friends were turning against her. All the boyfriends sleeping with drama aside, she sounds like a crappy person in general, not just the stealing of your dog. It's no wonder no one close to her was going to back her up. We don't get any more updates on this story, but I hope that they really did catch up to her and she got held accountable for what she did. She's probably just lucky she wasn't there when the owner showed up, or she would have gotten her butt beat yet again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. High school jerks decide to egg the quiet kid's house, not realizing that they have the granddaddy of revenge pranks coming their way. I spent my high school years in a small town in Wisconsin. There were only a few stoplights and everyone knew everyone. If you screwed up or did something embarrassing, everyone knew about it within hours, sometimes sooner. I had a small circle of friends and then a host of acquaintances that I hung out with from time to time. One of them is the center of our story. He was a pretty good guy. We'll call him Ted for the story's sake. The problem, of course, was that he was your standard outcast in high school life. He wasn't athletic, played video games in a time where gamers truly were considered nerds or geeks, and was a skinny kid with glasses, which made him easy to pick on. I've been and always will be a gamer, so he and I had no issues getting along. I was slightly more athletic and played football, so I was able to at least keep some of the guys off his back for him. There was nothing I could do about the hockey guys, though. Let's go to the event in question. It was a Saturday night and we were at the bowling alley with a couple of our mutual friends. All was going well until several members of said hockey team come walking in, and of course get put in the lane just a couple down from us. Close enough where they could be jerks and show off in front of their girlfriends. Of course they singled him out and left the rest of us alone. But that doesn't really fly very well with me, and I tried to get them to stop, which failed of course. After putting up with their crap for an entire game, Ted finally showed a little backbone, and quite loudly told them to shut the heck up and leave him alone. Well, in small town logic, doing something like that means you're asking for more trouble that you don't want. One of the players said to him, "Oh, you're gonna be a big man now. Well, don't worry, we'll put you in your place." I stepped in and told them to just leave us alone, and that nothing needed to happen, because it was really pointless, as just about everything was regarding high school issues. They stopped it and we finished our game, heading to one of our mutual friends' houses to hang out there. We think nothing of it and I head home pretty late that night. My phone rings the next morning. It's Ted and he's crying.
They egged my house last night.
The hockey guys?
Yes, it's a mess.
How bad is it? And how do you know it was them?
One of them called me to rub it in. We had the windows open. Some of it got in here.
I headed over there shortly after, and sure enough, the house was absolutely pelted and covered with yolk, marks, eggshells, everything. Inside the house were at least 7 or 8 direct hits. It was pretty gross. I stuck around and helped him clean it up. During the cleanup, though, I realized that Ted was not only over his crying, but he was plotting revenge. When we were done cleaning up, he started calling up a couple of his friends for ideas. He wasn't going to be able to get everyone back, but he could at least get the one that seemingly led the charge. And he did get him. Oh boy, did he get him. Being in Wisconsin, one thing that underagers really like to do, besides drink illegally, is to chew tobacco. He had a couple of friends who did just that, and because they weren't exactly the cleanest people around, had some bottles of spit and other things laying about. He asked them to bring him whatever they could. Before they came over with those bottles, he went and bought a couple dozen eggs. I assumed he was going to return the favor of egging the house and just taking it one step further. Nope, he was out to do damage. So what's the plan?
I'm gonna get however big of a container I need and throw all of this stuff together. Rotten eggs, chew spit, whatever else I can find.
I threw up a little bit in my mouth. Wow, that's pretty darn good. You gonna throw it on the jerk's house?
Oh no, something way better than that.
He ended up combining all of it into a small bucket. There was a lot of it. It was extremely disgusting. To top it off, he left it outside in the sun to just kind of stew for a while. It was an unusually warm spring for us, so leaving that outside to stew was pretty darn ingenious. He left it outside for a week. By the time the following weekend rolled around, this was some of the worst smelling crap I had ever encountered. The kid had a plan, and he was gonna do whatever he had in mind. His parents were trying to figure out if it was possible to do an investigation, but with no witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. Phone calls meant nothing, and Ted figured this was the best option. Ted's plan was simple. You see, Hockey Jerk had a brand new truck. It also had a pretty good sound system in it, and these guys would hang out in parking lots just sitting around, talking, complaining, and he would have his windows wide open. Ted was getting that bucket of wretchedness into the cab of his truck. He didn't care how. Unfortunately, I wasn't around to witness this. I was out of state with the family the weekend that it occurred, but I did get the phone call from our friend who drove him to the hangout. He was lucky enough to catch them in the parking lot and far enough away from the truck where he had a clean shot. They pulled up alongside of the truck, and Ted managed to pop out, launch the contents of the bucket into the cab through the window, and get back into the car before they could make it to him. While on the phone with the getaway driver, I could hear Ted laughing so hard in the background, he was hyperventilating. I was concerned that he was going to get into major trouble, but he truly did not care. He had reached his breaking point and was basking in the glory of his revenge. I got back to school on Monday and it was the talk of the school. The truck's interior was flat out ruined and smelled like Sex Panther. He couldn't even drive it because Ted had managed to do a surgical strike and douse just about everything, and then just chucked the bucket into it upside down to ensure that it all got in there. He had become a legend in the manner that he'd only ever hoped for. Ted had been concerned that he was going to get his butt kicked because of this, and truth be told, I think everyone expected it. However, it didn't happen, because word had already reached the higher-ups in the school. My town was very much a good old boy town where eye for an eye still meant something. The two of them were brought into a meeting and told that they were not even to speak to each other. As for the damages caused, both sets of parents were informed of what was shared in the meeting, where each of them admitted to their actions. The parents were asked to handle discipline of each of their children and to work out the issue of the damages caused. The parents ended up agreeing to just take care of their own problems and leave it at that. No one bothered Ted after that. Hockey Jerk's truck became known as the Spit Cup truck, which ticked him off to no end. Ted ended up getting a girlfriend out of the whole mess, because honestly, showing that kind of guts, it just had to happen. He never really became a popular kid in high school, but no one dared screw with him after that. Yeah, that definitely took a lot of guts. You gotta assume that there are gonna be some kind of repercussions coming your way after an act like that, and he went through with it anyway. I'm not saying the alternative was better for him to just sit there and take it. I'm just saying it took some guts to do that. Apparently the lesson here is if you're gonna get revenge, you gotta go big. That way everyone knows about it, and it's a little bit harder for them to get back at you. I doubt these jerks ever thought that kid had it in him. Somehow, I ended up with a magically refilling beer. I was sitting in a local restaurant having dinner and a beer after work on a Friday evening. The restaurant wasn't packed and it was nice and quiet, and I didn't see anyone I knew, so I just sat there all by myself with my own thoughts enjoying the meal. I finished the meal and my beer and went outside for a smoke. When I came back in, there was a new beer on my table. I asked the waiter if he'd read my mind, and he just smiled at me. After the beer, I ordered a drink and finished it before I went to the bathroom to make room for another one. Same thing happened. There was a new drink standing on my table waiting for me. I was puzzled for a bit, but finished it and called the waiter to pay my bill. He came over and told me that it was already taken care of. What? By who? And why? It turned out that a man I didn't know paid it all. I thanked him but asked him why, as I clearly didn't know him. He asked me if I remembered helping a young couple moving a large cupboard from a trailer and inside a house a year or so ago. I barely did, as it was a long time ago and wasn't anything special. One day when I was walking around the neighborhood, he and his pregnant wife, I guess 6 or 7 months, had bought said cupboard and I was helping him lift it so his wife didn't have to. I mean, she was pregnant, and that's what you do. You help out when you can. They didn't know anyone around the area and didn't have anyone to ask for help, and thought she would have to help out lifting it. He said, "Actually, I own this place. It's my pleasure to give something back to you for the help you gave us back then. Sorry for the lack of Karens and the drama you're familiar with in these stories." You don't need to apologize at all, my friend. It's nice to have a good wholesome one once in a while. Our original poster kind of wrote off his good deed, thinking that it's just something that anyone would do. And I agree. I think most people would think that way. But regardless, there are those who would just walk on by, or think themselves too busy and think someone else is going to help them instead. But you actually stopped and did the task and helped, and that counts for something. It's nice to get a little something back, even if it's way in the future. Karen demands I bring her car around and then assaults me. This happened in spring of 2018. My mother had traveled abroad to visit one of her relatives, so when she was flying back, I went to get her. We live about 3 hours away from the airport. Because our oldest was recovering from a stomach bug, hubby decided to stay home with the kids and I would get my mother and bring her home. My mother's flight was scheduled to arrive at 1:15, but when I got there, I found out that they had a 2-hour delay and I had to wait. I thought, all right, I'll enjoy a coffee while I wait, and notified my husband. The weather was good, with no clouds, and I decided to have my coffee on the outside patio of the coffee shop. I grabbed my tablet and, because the airport is a bit windy, a yellow windbreaker. And apparently that was the problem. I was reading my book on my tablet, enjoying my coffee, wearing my yellow windbreaker, when I heard a, "Hey, you!" I didn't think it was directed at me and continued reading. Then I felt someone looming above me, and "I'm talking to you." I looked up to see a man looking down at me. The following exchange happened. For the cast, we have me, Chad, the entitled jerk, Karen, the entitled jerk's wife, and the police officer. Yes?
Where's my rental?
Thinking he was asking where the rental companies had desks, I replied that they were on the other side of arrivals area.
Okay, well, be a good employee and bring it here.
I will certainly not do that. I don't work for the rentals.
Yes, you do. Now go and get it.
No. This goes on back and forth like we're 4-year-old kids when Karen inserts herself in the conversation.
Honey, what's taking so long? This employee here doesn't want to bring our rental.
Karen comes and grabs my windbreaker's lapel and puts her face uncomfortably close to mine.
Listen, you little jerk. Me and my husband are very good clients. I don't care if you're on your break, but if you don't bring the car in 3 minutes, we will get you fired.
I'm extremely ticked off at that point. Listen, jerk, take your paws off me or we will have trouble.
Oh, you threaten me? Me? You are so getting fired.
At that point, she swings her arm, hitting the coffee, spilling it on the table, but missing the tablet, and all over me. I stand up, screaming, "Screw off, jerk! Go find your own rental!" Karen at that point slapped me, while her husband was screaming obscenities. I flipped and slapped her back, which initiated a fight. When the initial argument began, a couple of bystanders had taken notice. The shouting had attracted a crowd, and when the fighting started, somebody called the cops. 2 officers came and separated us.
All right, what happened? The employee refused to help us and then attacked my wife.
I don't work here, jerk, and your wife attacked me. Madam, language, please.
I want to press charges.
Okay, you're all coming with us. We ended up at the airport police station. One officer went to get the manager of the rental company and the other reviewed the tapes with his boss. The rental company manager verified I wasn't an employee. They wear white shirts and black ties and a lanyard with their access ID. I was wearing a Cthulhu t-shirt and jeans. The cameras verified the attack. I pressed charges on the jerk and just left to get my mother. Whoa, this got out of control real quick. Wearing a yellow windbreaker shouldn't make you a target for Karens. I don't know what I would have done if I was in our original poster situation. You're just hanging out, enjoying yourself, and this couple's getting aggressively in your face. I mean, I guess you can try and walk away, but this sounds like it escalated so quickly, our poster didn't really have that chance. Either way, good for her for standing up for herself, and I'm glad there were cameras nearby. Otherwise, who knows what kind of story that Karen would have spun.
My grandpa catches a thief in a trap he built, but it scares the thief so bad he has a heart attack. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. My grandpa was an amazing man. I gladly attribute my writing style to him. He was simply an incredible storyteller. I've been imitating his humor since I was old enough to say so. He had some great revenge stories too, especially from the Army Reserve, and when he was a Boy Scout leader too, come to think of it. Grandpa worked for a company that set up displays in grocery stores. Due to his generous and talkative nature, he had a lot of contracts and connections, which meant that he was offered all sorts of food that was nearing its expiration date. Even better, once a display was done, it was often to be disposed of, which meant it was whisked away to the basement. Grandpa's basement was like a grocery store that did your laundry while you shopped. It was awesome. He even had a refrigerated section. The dairy products needed to be eaten right away so they didn't go bad. But the potato chips, cans of soda, fruit drinks, cereal, canned food, and other non-perishable stuff lined the shelves and filled the fridge. While the grown-ups would grab a few cans of green beans or a bulk bag of frozen pizzas, the grandkids knew where the good stuff was. An inflatable 3-foot-long Oscar Mayer hot dog in a bun, an inflatable package of sliced cheese, a world globe made of fake candy, and all the ice shovels we could ever want, to name a few. When he was selling stores on new products, we got the extra samples. Nintendo cereal, Danone bottled water in yogurt containers, I don't think those ever made it to market, and all sorts of amazing things. His twice-yearly garage sales were the stuff of legend. While most of the stuff was stored in the basement, some of it was boxed up in the shed. Long-term food and trinkets that could stand the summer heat. Grandpa's shed was one of those simple corrugated metal things. The doors didn't even lock. It housed his lawnmower, some grass seed, and a few boxes of bulk goods for his garage sales. One day, he saw that a box was open and some trinkets inside were gone. Over the next few weeks, he saw other things go missing. Not big stuff. Just toys and trinkets, which is why he suspected a neighbor kid was breaking into his shed. There weren't many kids on the block though, and he never saw them actually breaking in, but an adult would have taken more or not come back at all. His shed was in the fenced backyard too, so it wasn't like someone was just wandering past. Finally, after losing quite a few trinkets and finding a box knocked over onto the floor, he decided to take matters into his own hands. He had a day off in the middle of the week, and that evening he built a trap that would have made Rube Goldberg weep for joy. It involved balloons, falling marbles, roller skates, the works. He spent a week planning it. There were drawings. Once he finally built it, he went to bed, content that he would catch his thief. Early the next morning, he got up, made coffee, and waited for his burglar. As always happens, he was taking a break from watching when he heard part of his trap spring. I think it was the balloon that popped when the door was moved. He ran for the back door, pelted down the back steps, and ran around the side of the house just in time to see a flash of movement. Only a glimpse, but enough that he saw exactly where the burglar was, hiding behind a tree. He crept up to the tree, moving stealthily on his driveway. Now, this tree was special. For whatever reason, it split a little less than 4 feet off the ground, the crotch of the tree making a wide U shape. It was perfect for climbing. Grandpa, having reached the tree, realized he could look down on the thief from above. The thief peeked around the tree, saw Grandpa there, and leaped up. And at the same instant, Grandpa popped his head over the tree, screaming bloody murder, hoping to scare the ever-living daylights out of the sneaky little thief. For a moment, the thief stared in absolute shock and terror, then keeled over, flat on his back. The excitement of the chase and the sudden shock of seeing my grandpa's contorted face screaming down at him was too much. His heart must have given out. My grandpa actually scared him to death. For a moment, my grandpa just stared. Then, unbelieving, went around the tree and gave the recent corpse a gentle nudge. The thief was dead as a doornail. Grandpa leaned against the tree,
put his hands over his face, and laughed until he could barely breathe. I can still picture the tears of laughter in his eyes as he told me the story of how he gave a squirrel a heart attack. He never got his trinkets back, but boy did he ever get his revenge. You know, I gotta give credit to our original poster here. They said they were a good storyteller right at the beginning, and by the end, I'd forgotten, but I absolutely have to give them that credit. I didn't see that coming. I thought his grandpa was a little twisted at first, laughing at a dead body, but given that it was a squirrel, I can definitely see the humor. You don't expect to scare a squirrel to death. Sounds like this little guy was giving your grandpa quite a hard time, but I don't think he deserved to go out like that. Entitled student tries to present my friend's designs as her own and gets kicked out of the university. So my friend over in Korea studies fashion design. She sometimes sends me over sketches of the designs, and they all look amazing. But then again, I'm not exactly into fashion. She's particularly interested in designing handbags and purses. She told me a story about how she shut down one of the most entitled, self-centered, lazy students on campus. For our cast, we have Grace, our main girl, Jane, the evil one, and the professor. At first, Grace and Jane got along just fine. They were both interested in similar stuff, and quickly became BFFs. Grace decided to show Jane her sketches and designs for handbags and purses, and Jane was really impressed by it, mostly because the sketches were in incredible detail, including all the patterns and sew lines coupled with figurative measurements. Even the professor was impressed by it, and it was no surprise that Grace got a high mark on their first major exam. Jane didn't do so well, and practically followed Grace everywhere to get pointers on how to do better. So Grace decided to help her out. Unfortunately, Jane turned out to be one of the most entitled, lazy, and selfish people that Grace has ever met. Things that Jane did to tick Grace off included, but not limited to, not paying attention, being late on their study session, never showed appreciation, didn't pay for coffee or snacks, and complaining annoyingly about how hard it is to draw something. Grace pretty much gave up on her after a week, refusing to meet Jane outside of her class. Time went by, and for their midterm, everyone in the class had to do a presentation on the stuff they had designed. When it was Jane's turn, Grace was shocked to see Jane had stolen one of her designs. Thankfully, Grace had multiple designs going on, so there were no conflicts when it was her turn to present. But she was seething with rage. Grace had a meeting with the professor afterwards, and the professor knew what was going on but couldn't really do anything with Jane, because it turns out she was the daughter of the chairman, or one of the major investors. Grace said she can't remember. The chairman apparently blackmailed the professor into giving Jane the best grades. Professor did, however, help Grace devise a plan to humiliate and expose Jane. For the finals, the professor announced to the class that they would do another presentation, but it would be 3 designs and advised that they bring their A-games, because professionals from industries would be grading their work, and the head of the department and the chairman would be there as well. So you know how Grace had a bunch of sketches for the class? Well, Grace also had a separate sketchbook that had designs for major brands. Michael Kors, Coach, you name it. She never used these directly for class assignments, but rather as inspirations for her designs. Grace pretended to be all friendly with Jane again, and brought the other sketchbook on their meetings, still putting up with all the problems mentioned above. Grace secretly worked tirelessly on her new design, and did her best to keep it a secret from Jane. So the day of the final presentation arrives, and Grace and Professor are grinning, because they know what's about to happen. Grace went first, and she got a lot of praise from the judges. After a few more presentations, the last one to go was Jane. Jane's presentation turned out to be another copycat, copying designs of not 1, not 2, but 3 different companies. After the presentation, this was how it all went down, at least according to Grace. So you're saying you designed all these by yourself, right? That's right. And you swear that it was really your design and you didn't copy from anything else, right? I swear. Are you aware your designs are from 3 different brands? Huh? Are you aware that these are on the market right now, and some of the most popular designs? Wait, hold on. Yeah, I was gonna bring this up. If you had worked for any brands, you would have probably been fired, or worst case, sued. But please, I'm not done yet. Did you honestly think that this would work? We, the judges, have been in the industry for over 10 years. We know a copycat when we see it. But These aren't even my designs. They're from Grace.
Is this true?
Yes, but I'd never use them for major projects nor call them my work. I just use sketches of them as inspirations for my own designs.
Well, that was clear from your presentation.
They turned back to Jane.
Now, Miss Jane, this is a clear case of plagiarism, and I do hope your school is merciful on this matter.
After the presentation was over, the chairman screamed at the professor in front of everyone, not realizing he just revealed all the blackmailing and the secret grade deal. Jane tried to call out Grace on how she screwed her over, but it didn't really matter. No one listened to Jane's attempt and slander, and she was kicked out of the school. Chairman pretty much lost all support and had to resign, and was replaced by a far more honorable and competent one. Yeah, she had that one coming. I'm surprised that after Jane stole the designs the first time, that she wasn't suspicious that Grace wanted to hang out again. She must know Grace knows that those were her designs. It didn't seem like there was any confrontation over it, but I'm sure she knows. You must know you've thrown that friendship down the drain that point, and that they're probably just looking to get back at you. Jane brought it on herself, not just by stealing the design, but by not seeing this coming. At the very least, she's trying to work in the industry. She should know what the top bags currently look like. No amount of blackmailing is going to fill that hole in her knowledge. That's something she needs to at least have some small interest in. Otherwise, what is she doing here? My entitled aunt thinks I should support my entitled mother. So this happened this year. A little backstory. My mom mooched off of people her entire life. From purposely getting pregnant with me when she was 17 by lying to my dad that she was on the pill, to living with my grandparents the last 25 years after my dad divorced her when I was 3. There's a lot of stories I could go into, but suffice it to say that she only wants people to take care of her, from money to cleaning, and she thinks she does no wrong and she's the victim. Often screaming at my grandparents when they ask her to get a job to help since they had declining health and medical bills piling up. She would say things like, "I do a lot around here. I pay for some of the food," with her food stamps. Or, "Everyone always blames me for everything," and goes on a tangent trying to guilt trip and bully. My granddad, now that my grandmom has passed, wouldn't put up with it anymore and sold his house to move into a nursing home, leaving my mom and her other 2 teen kids, my aunt, her husband and kids, and my uncle, who's probably autistic to be honest, without anywhere to live. This was finalized about 4 months ago. My mom with 2 kids is now living in a crappy, leaking, barely functioning camper in a Walmart parking lot. My dad has tried his best to shield my brother and me from most of the insanity growing up, even spending $20,000 in legal fees to get full custody. But it doesn't stop her from asking for money, trying to crash at our places and things like that. Eventually, I moved to a different state, and she still doesn't have my address. But let's get to the story. 1 year ago, I got a text from my aunt. It reads as follows.
"I'm going to be a little harsh with you right at this moment. You and your brother need to stop depending on everyone else to take care of your mother. Dad will be moving into an independent living facility within the next month, and she's using Dad, living here for free and not contributing in any way. The house stinks in the area where she lives, and it reeks of stale cigarettes and foot fungus and BO. She needs to get her act together, and if need be, y'all need to help her get it together. It's come to the point where there are arguments constantly about her nastiness. Dad being in the hospital for the last few days and now at a rehabilitation center, he needs to have it stress-free at this house, and he needs to be able to sell this house. The one main complaint to people that would come to look at this house was the smell that's here. And that should never be something that's complained about in a house that's being shown to sell. I apologize if this seems rude, but at this point, I really don't know what else to do. You and your brother need to step up and start taking care of your mother in some way, shape, or form. Your mother's always boasting about you making $70,000 a year, but you never help her out. You're to take care of your parents, just like they're supposed to take care of you. If at some point in your life you devoted your life to God, you're still a Christian. Whether you live that way or not, you're sealed for the day of redemption. If she doesn't find a way to get out of this house within the next week or so, she'll be without a house. I'm sorry, but that's the cold, honest truth. She has a car but won't fix it. I understand that it's an easy fix, but she has too good a thing with a free taxi service in Bryant. The truth of the matter is that she will not have a place soon. Your brother needs to help where he can, and so do you. And if you want to start a fight in this house, then complain to your mama. But I hope you don't and you do the right thing.
Now, understand that my brother and I have spent our lives trying to make something of ourselves. My brother just got on his feet and got a good job in his early 20s. I just moved to a different state and started to get my life back together after some incidents. I'm 27 at the time. My aunt does the same crap that my mom does. She has 2 kids there and a husband. She refuses to work and thinks she's better than everyone, and a really annoyingly religious person. I decide not to text back. At the time, I was furious because she knows how hard we've worked to be where we are, and still is asking us to support our entitled mom. I decided to copy and paste the text to my dad. Here's where some of it gets ugly. This is his text to my aunt. Hey, Aunt, it's Dad. Sorry to hear about your dad. He's a good man, and I've always liked him no matter what's going on. He was always nice to me. Now, that being said, it's very sad what's going on with Mom and her 2 kids, although she's had plenty of time to get her act together and did nothing. I've done everything in my power to make sure that my kids didn't get sucked down by her, and told them this day would come where she'd want to leech off them. Well, I didn't raise my kids to be dumb jerks, unlike your parents. Sorry, but the truth is, it's their fault that every one of you 4 are completely worthless and stupid, and I saved my kids and helped them to have a good life. And it's not their responsibility to pick up their worthless mom. It's sink or swim, and I'd advise you to put her in the street and let her swim on her own. But don't guilt trip my kids, which are fully aware that this day was coming and they're saying no. They aren't dumb enough to let it happen to them. That stupid jerk will suck the life out of my kids, and that ain't happening. So leave my kids out of it and put her on the street where she belongs. I didn't raise stupid kids, and both of them are smarter than all of you dumb jerks put together. So take your guilt trip and shove it. Have a nice day. After that, I think my aunt took an exception to the text and absolutely blew up my phone, saying,
I don't deserve this treatment. Is this what I get as your aunt? You've really become selfish.
Then she starts talking about how God loves me and crap, and this went on for days. It's been a year later, and I've not texted her back. I will not get dragged into the toxicity and support my able-bodied mother who doesn't want to do anything but get handouts. This story is actually a little bit unique compared to a lot of other stuff that we talk about, in the sense that the original poster did absolutely nothing, except copy and paste the text to their dad. They didn't instigate, retaliate, or do anything to warrant this behavior coming their way. This is literally just entitled family coming out of nowhere. And I'm sorry, I'm tempted to agree with them. It sounds like Mom has had plenty of time to get her act together and just never has. It's not on her kids to take care of her at that point. Like Dad said, it's sink or swim. She needs to step up now or just let life kick her in the butt. And if she can't cut it, then she's got no one to blame but herself. My roommate won't stop stealing food. So when I find out his mom is coming to visit, I come up with a plan that ended up leaving her in tears. So this happened way back in 2013. I was living in a large space with 5 roommates. One of my roommates was known for borrowing food, including expensive stuff like meat, but of course never replacing it. Well, one day I knew his mother was coming to visit and stay a few days, and his mom absolutely loved horses. So what I decided to do was bait this roommate with horse meat. It's not common in the US, but legal to buy imported. So I acquired some nice thin cuts, and I sliced most of it and salted and left it in a Tupperware in the fridge. Then I left the rest of the package with the horse meat store label in the freezer. Well, sure enough, in the evening, I noticed that some of the horse is gone. So I make a big deal about someone stealing some of my horse meat in front of his mom. They go, very funny. Sure, it's horse meat. And my roommate owns up to borrowing some meat he used to make him and his mom steak and eggs for breakfast, and lies that he'll replace it. That's when I pull out the package from the freezer and prove that it was in fact horse meat, and his mom burst into tears, crying to her son, "How could you feed me horse?" He definitely at least stopped borrowing my meat after that. I don't know how I feel about this one. I mean, sure, you got the end result you wanted with him getting in trouble and not taking your food anymore. But the real victim here was the mom, who didn't do anything wrong and wasn't involved in this situation at all. I really do just feel bad for her, honestly. I feel like there was another way that this could have happened without traumatizing the guy's mother. My mom turned my house into a prison, so I became an inmate in my own home. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. Let me tell you a tale. One of bratty kids, an overworked mother, and her revenge. Sit back and relax, because my brother can break your back. This is entirely true. She's a chiropractor. She actually learned how to break someone's neck and how to know the signs just in case she ever came close to actually doing it. Which, okay, wow, scary. But she learned it in a university setting on cadavers, so all good? Let's take a look back, way back, to the time of the first stirrings of the Y2K bug where people believed that the world was going to end in a nuclear holocaust. All because computers were going to hit 00 when the year 2000 came around. It was almost the summer of '99. I was just a twig of a child, mostly gangly limbs and big eyes, and all of 11 years old or so. Our cast for this tale is A, my eldest step-sibling, N, the catalyst of this tale, me, the Bambi-looking gullible one who should have known better, Lou, my stepbrother around my age, and he should have known better too, K, younger sister by 2 years, and L, the youngest, the baby of the family. Now, my mother remarried a man we shall call RG when I was about 8 years old. Due to the whole soap incident, he delegated all forms of discipline to her when it came to punishing us all in a whole. So due to her working long 13-hour days to support us all and the lack of allowance for doing chores because, let's face it, 6 kids tends to run you dry if you try to keep up with it all, we, the children, started slacking off. This did not sit well with my mother, who used her usual threat of, "I will go into your rooms, and whatever's on the floor goes in the garbage." This is something we'd heard all our lives, but us younger kids, as in me and all those below me, totally believed she would do it. Until this one fateful day. It was gorgeous outside. The sun was shining, spring had brought new leaves to the trees, and all the neighborhood kids could be heard screaming through the streets. The 90s were a time of uncontrolled childhood chaos, where parents happily released their spores into the wild and drank wine while they didn't have to think about their hellspawn until the streetlights flicked on. Unfortunately for us, my mother decided that this gorgeous weekend day was best used for picking up the slack that we let get away from us. She demanded we clean our rooms while repeating that well-known phrase we all knew and despised. We groaned, we whined, we relented, and started to comply. But then my sister, N, the stone-cold and wisest of the elder sisters, just shrugged and ignored the order. Her and A shared a room, practically having one side of the upper floor, which had a wall knocked down and renovated into almost like a mini apartment sans kitchen. They had it all to themselves, and at the all-knowing age of 13, N, and 15, A, they both decided they had better things to do that day than listen to our mom. A left to go on a date with her boyfriend she made the year before, and N sat in her room on her computer. A giant PC of a thing linked into a separate line so the dial-up wouldn't fudge up our phone systems. When we, the younger kids, started bugging her, shocked at her audacity, my sister N said these words. "It's not like she's actually gonna throw our stuff away. She paid for it all. She's not just gonna toss it all out because that's a waste of money. This is a home, not a prison. She's not the warden and we don't have to do what she says." Then she left us standing there with our puny, impressionable minds totally blown. We didn't have to do what mom said? Is that even possible? My younger sister Kay and my brother Lou took this at face value and immediately took off. They were 11, Lou, and 9, Kay, and had friends waiting on them. They didn't have time to waste cleaning their rooms on an empty threat. Elle, only 7 years old, was more hesitant, but was as easily distracted as I was, and we ended up playing Barbies for the rest of the day, totally forgetting about our worries until dinner time. Silence. Dinner was awkward. Mom was ticked about the house not getting cleaned, and RG was ready to lay his hammer down at my mother's command. The interrogation went as expected, and Kay, our more, expressive sister, who had a bit of a wrath from the Ninja Turtles type personality, blew up at my mother. "This is a home, Mom, not a prison, and it's my room." With this, dinner was concluded. Kay stormed off. Mom went quiet and, with the most Stepford wife smile ever, just asked us if we all felt this way. My elder sisters agreed immediately, not really caring because of teenage angst, and we younger kids slowly nodded at their incessant stares. "I see." And that was that. No punishments, no scoldings or groundings, and the rest of the weekend went off without a hiccup. We should have known something was up. Mom sent us all off to school Monday herself, which was unusual, because she usually woke up before us and was gone by the time we finished brushing our teeth. We then wouldn't see her until dinner later in the day, but she made us a big breakfast, hinted at a surprise for us when we got home from school, kissed us goodbye, and sent us happily out the door. Now, I'm sure you're all thinking that I should get on with it. What's this all building up to, and how does it fit in? Well, let me tell you. While we were at school, Mom, RG, and some of his friends came in and got rid of everything that would be enjoyable to a child. The basement was emptied and cleaned. All computers, video games, Game Boys, CD players, rodeos, and TVs were taken. Dressers and closets were emptied. Toys upon toys were tossed. Colorful blankets and sheets removed from beds, decorations, pencils and coloring tools, papers and scissors, glue, basically any and all craft supplies, gone. When we returned home, RG was in his military uniform and accosted us as we came through the door, pinned us to the wall, and frisked each of us. Backpacks, candy, and everything we had on us were taken. My mother then handed us some gray pajamas and ordered us to march into the bathroom to change. Terrified, we complied. The living room seemed so bare. The piano/recorder was gone, along with the TV. The puzzles and games usually kept in the room gone from the shelves. The bathroom was no better, bare of anything except Head and Shoulders and a bar of soap on a string for some reason. It smelled strongly of bleach. We were then sat down on lawn chairs. The couch was occupied by my stone-cold mother, as we waited for every child to arrive in silence. Welcome to the most miserable month of my life. We watched as my mother tossed all our clothes into a garbage bag. All toys and art supplies from our backpacks followed, and RG was in uniform and with his scariest expression, as my mother went through our new itinerary for life from now on. Wake up at dawn, PT in the mornings through the town led by RG, oatmeal with no sugar for breakfast, then off to school. Drop-off made to the classrooms by RG and pick up the moment the bell goes at the end of the day. Lunch is roast beef sandwiches, barely any mayo and wilted lettuce. The school had been informed to not give us anything else and to take away anything not given to us by our parents. Once home, we were each assigned a room to clean, our bags taken and checked for contraband. Room clean, PT on the backyard, a deflated soccer ball as a toy. Nothing else. Leave the fenced-in area and you get extra punishment. No friends, calls, or escape. Dinner was cold peas, corn, beans, and mystery meat. No butter, salt, or ketchup allowed. You don't take care of your home, you don't deserve a home. Welcome to prison. Homework was done at the table. Use of pencils and paper regulated and inventory counted. Bedtime was at 6. Lights out at 7 and the doors locked until morning. Bathroom must be used before bed or you have to go in the pot put in your room. It's up to you to keep it clean. We had 2 sets of PJs that we went to school in, all gray and a set for bed. It was up to us to keep them clean. Uniform must be maintained. Hair must be maintained. Our grades must stay high. No excuses, no exceptions. By the time a week was up, she had broken us. N and A had stayed stubborn, but even they broke by the 2nd week. Then the appeals. You want release? Write us an essay on why you think you're ready to return to society. Then an interview to determine leniency. Myself and my younger sister Elle managed to be allowed outside beyond the yard. It took several days for the others to follow. By the end of the month, we were ready to do anything my mother asked us to do. Then, on the same day as last time, she and RG came into our rooms and dumped garbage bags upon garbage bags. Every book to every Lego was in there, marked with our names. All of our stuff was brought back, and my mother dumped them all out onto the floor and said, "When I come back up here, whatever's on the floor goes in the garbage." We cleaned that up fast. We never ignored our chores again. Whoa, this mom is intense. Mind you, she's got 6 kids apparently. She needs to put her foot down when things start to get out of control. She can't have any talk of mutiny coming up. She's got to put that down hard and fast. This is definitely some extreme measures being taken here. A lot of people would argue with her parenting style. But you know what? She didn't hurt the kids in any way and let them know just how serious she was. You really think home is a prison? She'll show you just how much of a prison she can make it. After all of this, I doubt they're going to be taking her for granted again. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. My old boss holds my tools and final paycheck hostage, so I steal all of his employees. I'm a trade painter that worked for around 5 years, essentially running a company for an owner who took a very hands-off approach. He was essentially a name and working capital, and not much else. After getting an offer to work for a bigger commercial company, and my old boss's realization that he would have to run his own company as there wasn't anyone else in-house that was qualified, he resorted to acting like a child to try and make me stay. Made me run around the world to receive my final pay, which I never even got, and refused to return my tools spread throughout various jobs. As luck would have it, another even better offer from an even bigger company ended up in my lap that wanted to subcontract me a very substantial amount of their work, but I'm gonna need more employees for that. So I go through and call each and every member of the original company and offer them a $3 an hour raise to work for me, which all of them accepted. After all, they all know me, they've worked for me for years, and it's more money. No brainer. They barely know the owner, and what they do know, they don't like. I then asked them to grab only my tools from their respective jobs when they leave for the weekend on Friday, which was the vast majority of all the tools on the jobs. Monday rolls around, and my old boss is getting calls left and right from supervisors asking why nobody's at work and what's going on. He was so hands-off, he didn't even have employees' phone numbers to call and ask them. He's essentially without employees and little to no tools to complete any jobs at this point. Fast forward 6 months and his company is now closed. He's lost all his work. His new addition to his house has come to a grinding halt halfway through construction. He's hurting big time. I never got my last check, but I did get a great group of workers and a company of my own, so I guess I'll just call it even. Your employees aren't stupid. When the owner is that hands-off, they know things are going to go bad once the key player moves. And if that key player is someone you like and is offering you a new job that pays more, a lot of them are going to want to take them up on that offer. If you want to be that hands-off, then fine, but you gotta at least support your employees. And don't have everything falling on one person. Otherwise, it might end up going something like this. My mom is horrible at keeping secrets and refuses to admit it, so we set a trap for her. My mom had a fairly consistent habit of gossiping and sharing quite personal information. We knew she was doing it, but she would adamantly deny ever having done such a thing. I wish I could remember what she did that finally made me snap. It can't even have been that important. It was just the millionth time, and for once I wanted her to admit what she'd done and know that we knew too. So we set up a sting. My friend Jane and I approached my mom and told her that Jane was pregnant, that she wasn't ready to tell her mom yet, and she was really worried what people would think about her having a baby so young. She didn't want anyone to know yet, so it had to be top secret. Having set the trap, I figured within a few weeks or so I would have some evidence we could use. But I was so wrong. The very next day, my sister, grandma, and neighbor all asked me how my young pregnant friend was doing. When I was asked by a lady who worked at the supermarket that same day, I figured this had gone far enough and went home to confront my mom, only to have my dad ask how Jane was doing. I confronted my mom right there in front of my dad, which is when she started with the usual,
"Oh, I'd never do that. They must have heard from someone else"
routine. I explained very shortly and clearly that we'd fed her a lie to see how far it would spread, and the reaction was glorious. My mom's mouth fell open, and she just had nothing to say at all. My dad, on the other hand, fell back on the sofa roaring with laughter, bemoaning the fact that he hadn't thought of this years ago. It was a moment I'll treasure forever, and the point was thoroughly made. Now that my mom was aware what had happened, I was able to satisfy all further inquiries towards my friend's health with the true story, and my mom's audience for any further gossip was somewhat reduced. Sometimes calling them out just isn't good enough. If they're not going to admit it, then you need proof. What I'm impressed of is how fast she managed to spread this news. I mean, I guess in her mind it's a pretty juicy piece of gossip, so she's going to be telling everybody she talks to. At least with this, even if she does go running her mouth about some secret, maybe the people listening will be less inclined to believe her. Maybe you need to run this back a couple times, to the point where she doesn't know what's true and will just keep everything to herself. Karen tried to steal my cookie. One day, I was walking through City Market with my mom, the quiet buzzing of the lights only slightly annoying. All seemed well, and I decided to get one of the sample cookies from the back. Seems perfectly normal, right? So I grabbed my cookie, which happened to be the last non-burnt one, as another family is coming into the back aisle. I'm not a particularly social person, so I started to walk away. This family consisted of a mother and a son, the son being maybe 5 or 6 years old by my estimate, wearing a vibrant and disgusting shade of yellow. The mom had a typical Karen haircut and a bland red-colored sweater on over a bright white shirt and brand new looking skinny jeans. That didn't sound like a good time to me. They realized that there aren't any more non-burnt cookies, which in my opinion shouldn't be a problem. Cookies are cookies, especially free ones. The child wails horrifically and notices that my cookie that I haven't yet taken a bite out of was not burnt. Wonderful observation skills, little Timmy. The mom approaches me and asks in a sickly sweet tone, one that you can tell is obviously fake, if I wouldn't mind giving my cookie to her kid. I wasn't sure if the tone was from her having a headache from dealing with her kid or if she wasn't a nice person. But seeing as the kid was young, I chose to be nice and broke my cookie in half. Offering one of the halves to the kid, I wasn't about to miss out on eating my cookie, nor was I about to go grab another one, as I felt it would just be rude to the next people. The kid looked confused at this, which immediately felt off. The mom's face contorted from nice to confused to offended very quickly, as if not offering the entire cookie had somehow forsaken her entire family, and she stared at me like I was gonna sacrifice a goat in order to curse them. I naturally was confused, and realizing what was happening a bit too late, backed away, and tried walking away. The lady placed her hand on my shoulder, preventing me from walking away. I was maybe 12 at the time, so small boy. She held out her other hand as if expecting me to just hand my cookie over. Let me once again state that I had tried to share, but Karen and her little spawn of Hades don't seem to understand the concept of sharing, evident by the atrocious wailing the child was releasing from the depths of the underworld itself. I hate the sounds of crying children. I managed to pull away from the iron grasp of this lady and speed walked away. The guttural "Ree!" released from both her and her entitled child gave me the chills. She started marching up to me and tried to take the cookie from me. Before she could, a light bulb flickered on, before bursting in my head from the excitement to see the next levels of rage and profanities my plan was about to induce. I stuffed the entire cookie in my mouth. Now, these cookies were fairly big, bigger than the basic sugar cookies they usually give, so my mouth was stuffed. For a moment, Karen and her child are silent, stunned by what they've just witnessed. 10 seconds later, the gates of Hades are ripped from their hinges. Karen exploded at me, screeching profanities at me, many of which I surprisingly hadn't heard before. I stood there with the smuggest grin on my little face as I slowly chewed on the cookie, continuing to rub salt in the wound, until the profanities turned into indiscernible noises. Was it wrong of me to do so? Probably. Do I regret doing so? Absolutely not. After maybe 3 minutes of random sounds ejecting from the dark, deep chasm this woman produced, she stopped to take a breath. I had swallowed the cookie by now and was getting tired of listening to the white noise this lady was projecting, so I began to walk away.
"I'm not done with you,"
she yelled after me. Obviously, I chose to ignore her at this point, as I was just done with her. As soon as I was out of the aisle, I booked it back to my mom and continued on like nothing had happened. Honestly, I don't know why Karens do this type of stuff. There are plenty of cookies, just grab one. Don't try and take one out of another kid's hands. I know you think your kid is special, but you know what would be really special? You actually teaching them a lesson that they don't get everything they want. Honestly, would probably be a lot better for that kid than another cookie. With the way the kid's behaving, it seems like she uses cookies to solve a lot of problems. Property owner threatens us with retaliation for stepping on his lawn, so I get the city to tear down his house. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. We live next to a large open grass field. There's an old house on the property, but it's condemned and no one lives there. The owner of the property only shows up to mow the field, but does nothing else with the property. The garage beside the house is caving in on itself and just looks like trash. People walk through the field to go fish on the river, walk their dogs, or just wander. People think it's just city public property. A few days ago, we were outside playing with our dog and toddler. We were walking a few feet off our driveway, which is technically his property. He just happened to be driving by and pulled over and began yelling and was just in general overly aggressive. He yelled that we needed to stay on our own property. He accused us of tossing cigarette butts, but we don't smoke, and beer cans, even though we're never drinking outside, all over the field. He also yelled that we drive all over his field, causing mud puddles. Again, completely not true. He then pointed to our dog and complained that she needs to stay off his grass. In the past, he'd specifically said that he didn't care if our dog walked in the field. He proceeded to say that if he found any dog crap anywhere, he was going to retaliate against us, and we're not going to like it. This all happened within a few minutes. My boyfriend took the toddler and dog inside and came back out to try to talk to him and sort out these crazy accusations, but the guy had already left. We called the police to document the incident since he did make a threat. We're now looking into getting cameras and a way to get a fence up. Since the other neighbors also play with their dogs in the field and strangers walk through all the time, he can't blame us for any evidence of dogs being present. But that won't stop him from blaming us anyways, and I don't know what he means by retaliate. I've never been bothered by the crappy house on the property. Not my business or problem. But since he wants to be a jerk, suddenly I'm super bothered about it. So I called the city code enforcement office and filed a complaint. I said I've been seeing wild animals coming and going from the building, and that I see kids walk through the field all the time and I worry someone's gonna get hurt, and that my neighbors are all upset about this too. Now, all of this is true, but I just frankly never gave a crap until now. He now has 30 days to either demolish the whole thing or fix it up, and it's definitely beyond fixing. Or else he has to appear in front of a judge. The city will fine him severely, and if action still isn't taken, they'll seize the property from him entirely. You want to scream at my family in front of my toddler and threaten my dog? I think you're gonna be a little too busy now with the city breathing down your neck. Enjoy your fines, court costs, and construction bills, jerk. For some clarification, the building on the property is not his home. It's an old house that has been uncared for and allowed to fall apart for the past decade. Multiple people in the neighborhood have called and complained, but the old code enforcement officer just gave him warning after warning. The property owner has been asked by neighbors to please take care of the problem, because it's awful to look at and wild animals hide in there. He's refused. There's a new code enforcement officer that actually cares and wants it taken care of. Property owner has had years to take care of the issue. Me calling only helped speed things up, but it was gonna happen anyway. We are not angry because he doesn't want us on the property. It's his property and he has that right. We're angry because he gave us permission to play fetch on the field, and when he changed his mind, which again is his right, instead of telling us he changed his mind, he instead shows up out of nowhere, very hostile and making threats. Update: COVID caused all the court appearances to be pushed back by a few months. So he hadn't done a thing to the building. Just within the past 2 weeks, he finally had a crew come take it down. It took about a week. I assume he waited till the last possible moment before his updated court date to do this. When the garage door was opened, you could see it was much worse than expected. The back portion of the roof was completely caved in all the way to the ground. It's a miracle nobody got hurt while they were taking things out of there. But now the building is gone and it's one less eyesore and danger to the neighborhood. The house itself is still pretty bad, but not as bad as the garage. Also, found out where he lives, and it's in this mansion of a house in a very wealthy neighborhood. So clearly he does well enough for himself that he could have afforded to take care of these issues long ago. He just doesn't care. We haven't had any further altercations with him. He's had no reason to even know we called because most of the neighborhood has been complaining for years. But we are careful to avoid him, and our dog now wears an electric collar, so no one can question her being outside our property. I've still seen other people walking around the field, but now that it's winter, that'll stop for a while. Here's hoping he finally sells the property to someone who can actually take care of it.
To play devil's advocate here, if he had this much problem with other people going into his property and messing around, maybe it all just got aimed in the wrong direction. I'm sure with people walking their dogs through there all the time, there's crap all over the place. And we all know how teenage kids are, so there may be damage to the property or something like that, and that would probably account for the beer cans. Maybe the guy was just having a bad day and pointed this all at his neighbors cause he happened to see you guys step 3 feet onto his property. Regardless though, the threats are going way overboard. If anything, these neighbors are your best friends. They have perfect sight of your property and can maybe help you get people to stay off it. Maybe not the people you want to go making enemies with. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. Karen tries to cut in front of me in line and immediately regrets it. This happened to me just before the pandemic at a Wally World. It was a very busy day. My husband and I had just finished our shopping, so I was standing in line waiting to cash out. Now, the lines were very long. There's at least 8 people behind me, and I was probably at least the 4th person before the cashier in line. My husband stepped away to find some beverages for us to drink on the way home since it was still warm outside. This lady, the Karen of our story, was standing near the coolers that are near the register. She was acting like she was looking in the coolers for something. She put her hand on my card as if to steady herself.
So I moved my cart back a smidge so she could look in the cooler without having to touch my cart. I tried to just ignore her. I'm not the type of person who likes to converse with people I don't know. I have severe social anxiety. She continues to look in the coolers, but lets go of my cart. The line continues to move slowly, but I'm now at least third in line. So you can understand, the Karen never said a word to me and continues to look in the cooler as if she's looking for something. Now, for some ungodly reason, Karen firmly grabs the front end of my cart, holds on to it, yells to someone, and motions for them to come over. I looked over to see what looks to be like a neckbeard. He was probably at least 6 feet tall, every bit of 300 pounds, and actually had a neckbeard. I really wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Karen continues to call for Neckbeard to come over as she motions for him to get in front of me. Now, this Karen never once said a word to me, nor did she even ask if she could get in front of me. I turned around and looked to see that there's at least 12 people standing in line behind me. Karen's neckbeard had a cart that was overflowing and was expecting to get in front of me without asking. I did the only thing I could do. I pushed my cart forward and said, "Nope, nope, nope." Karen takes her hand off my cart, steps back like I just ran over her foot, and stands there with a surprised Pikachu face, with her lips flapping open and closed. She then looks around to see if anyone would help, looking panicked as if she was just assaulted, but no one would help her. I happened to hear the lady behind me say, "Damn right," as she closed the gap between us. I also saw the man behind her, as he moved forward to close the gap. He was just shaking his head. I heard a few chuckles from the crowd that was watching all this. No one was gonna stand up for Karen. An injustice had been done to her, but no one was gonna help her. Neckbeard then says to her,
"But Mom, the line is long. Where do I go?"
Karen just signals to move further down and walks away with Neckbeard. I never laughed so hard in my life. I couldn't believe that I acted so quickly to stop the jerk. You run into one of these every once in a while. People who think they can just cut in line for no apparent reason. Like, for whatever reason, their time is more important than everyone else's. I'm sorry. Especially when you have a massive cart full like that, I'm not letting you cut in line. And to try and just force your way in is a real jerk move. No one's backing you up in this instance. They all saw what you did, and none of them were happy about it. My manager tried to fire me for bogus reasons until I pointed out exactly how he was breaking the law. This happened to me about 20 years ago while in college. I'm being deliberately vague because reasons. I got a job basically office sitting on weekends. I showed up at 8 a.m. and every hour I checked over things, handled the occasional phone call, and then left when the 4 p.m. person arrived. Most of the time I read, watched TV, or played games on my laptop. I probably worked no more than 10 minutes of every hour, unless something was wrong. It went on like this for years. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I even had opportunities to cover weekday shifts when others were sick. One day, while I was covering the midday shift, my boss asked me to come into his office. He told me that the evening weekday position was going to become available that night. He offered me the position, which I accepted. I was told to punch out and return at 5 p.m. that night. The reason it went down like this should be obvious. Things went okay for a while. I showed up at 4 p.m., did the normal things, then left at 12 a.m. when my relief arrived. It was a little more work with more call volumes and things like that, but after 9 months, things started to go south. The daytime person developed a huge attitude problem and went from a nice person to a total Karen. She would complain about everything I did. For example, one time a system jammed up at a remote site and she called them. 5 hours later, I saw the jam was still there. So I called that site again to see if they were still working on it or if something else was wrong, because the woman on our end who would be the one to help them was leaving soon. They did have a problem, and so I hooked them up. My reward for making sure the problem got solved and not having to bother an upper-level employee at home on a Friday just after having left work, I got yelled at because Karen complained that I had apparently ignored her log entry about the issue. My defense was ignored. The boss had me highlight important things on the log to verify that I had read them. Things plodded on for a while with this new normal. I would tiptoe around Karen when needed, thankful for the fact that I only had to deal with her for no more than 5 minutes. I did the stupid highlighting thing and my log entries started getting more and more detailed, even referencing Karen's calls when I had to follow up on an issue that crossed shifts. The following morning, just after I crossed the year mark, I went on vacation to visit some friends out of state. When I got back, after about a week, my boss came down after everyone had left and had me describe how I did a certain task which involved certain updates. I had to explain to him how I did it and so forth. He then told me that I had not been doing it at all and that he was firing me. I had transposed the date code of the English file for the French file, which was the previous one. The newest one had already been applied anyways, so nothing was wrong. It was just a reason to get rid of me. So I left the office. My state is an at-will employment state, which means I can quit at any time for any reason, and my employer can terminate me at any time for any reason. The only exceptions were state and federal laws such as race, religion, etc. I thought I was screwed, so I just started applying everywhere I could. During my job search, I happened to accidentally stumble upon a link about employment law. Out of curiosity, I read it and discovered that my employer had shot themselves in the foot. In the employee handbook, there was a job security clause. What this stated was that they would never lay us off and such if our jobs were eliminated. We would simply be retrained and sent to fill an opening elsewhere in the company. It sounds good, but it resulted in them cooking up reasons to fire people to get around it. But their fancy, high-priced lawyers had missed something. In my state's laws, the ones passed by the legislature, I was screwed because of at-will. What they neglected was case law, the ones determined by courts. This site cited a case from the state Supreme Court that had ruled that a job security clause waived at will on the employer side, turning it into a just cause relationship. This means that they had to have a real reason to fire me. With that in hand, I sought out a lawyer. After my consultation with her, I set about collecting my evidence. My former boss did not realize that I knew more about this program than he did, seeing as I ran the same software on my own computer and laptop. I experimented. The date of the file, which they tried to use against me, is baked into the version 2. I was able to demonstrate to my lawyer that if I applied the same update over and over, which my former employer stated would change the date every day, would in reality display the date of the file. I showed this by backdating my own copy by a year using the update archive available from the vendor. Next, I showed her how the task used to be automated. A script would snag the file and process it every day on its own. A change on the vendor's site broke the script. It was an easy fix, but no one bothered to do it because the guy who had wrote it retired. The fix often involved deleting 3 characters on one line in the script. The task was also marked as only being a weekday task. In my firing, I was told how important this update was and so forth. If it was so important, why was it not being done on weekends and holidays? The vendor pushed out updates on those days too, as I showed my lawyer the one from Christmas morning. And why had the automation not been fixed? With all that in hand, she contacted them. After presenting them with the law they broke and all the evidence I had collected, they were forced to settle with me. So in the end, their fancy high-priced lawyers did not do their homework. I did. Thank you to the wonderful librarians I've known in my life who taught me my information literacy skills. They paid dividends in this case. I don't know what it is with employers that like to try and pull sneaky stuff like this. It really sounds like they were just fishing for a reason to get rid of you. I mean, it doesn't sound like you were the best employee doing the bare minimum, but if they wanted to change that, this isn't the way to go about it. Trying to let someone go on something bogus is only gonna have negative repercussions for you. You're giving them a big weapon against you. It's not worth it. If that comes back to bite you in the butt, it can ruin everything. If there's really an employee you have a problem with, go through the steps you're supposed to go through. Do it the right way. Don't be a jerk like this. My entitled sister wants me to house my niece for free during university. My niece had to move back in with her mother after the lockdown started. She lost her job and all her classes were online. Her lease was month to month, so she didn't have to worry about breaking her lease. Recently, the schools have reopened and she started attending classes again. Problem is, her apartment, which was walking distance from her university, is now rented. Parking in the area sucks, and it's an hour one way from her mother's house on public transit. I will say that my niece is also incredibly spoiled and is taking classes for a degree with no practical benefits. By this, I mean that it will in no way help her with a career path, nor are they necessary courses for further education. I got a call from my sister asking if my niece could live with me because I live alone in a 2-bedroom house, and I'm a 15-minute bus trip away from her university. I said no for several reasons. One, I work nights and need to sleep during the day. My niece is a very loud young woman and doesn't understand the concept of an indoor voice. Last time she stayed in the same home as me, I was sleep deprived because of her practically yelling on her phone, and it affected how I did my job, resulting in a write-up. Number 2, my niece is also a very messy person. I helped with the move out, and the memory makes me shudder. Some of the unwashed dishes in the sink were tossed because they were beyond cleaning. She tried to just sit on random crap and text her friends and scroll TikTok. I had to take her phone and lock it in the glove box of the U-Haul we rented to get her butt moving to help. My sister still calls me a jerk for doing this. Number 3, while I may have a 2-bedroom home, the second room is my office/work room. I've been in the process of making wire wrap necklaces to sell online for extra income, and I need the area as a workspace. It's also my library for lack of a better word. I keep my collection of novels on bookshelves in there and a comfy old recliner for reading in. Number 4, my niece is allergic to cats and I have 3. My sister seems to think I can keep them all either in my bedroom or locked up in the basement for the school year. Absolutely not. Number 5, and this is the big one, my sister's under the belief that my niece wouldn't have to help out with household expenses or be expected to cook for herself. She also thinks that my niece shouldn't have to get a job while in school to focus on her studies. She tried to pull the "we're family and should help each other out" card, but that didn't count for crap when my step-siblings nearly made me homeless after my stepdad died and gave me 30 days to find a new place for me and my dog. Dog-friendly buildings where I live are hard to find. The only way I would agree for my niece to live with me is that she would give me $250 a month to help cover utilities and part of the internet. I figured that that's a steal considering a cheap place around her school is more than double or even triple that, plus utilities, and she could use the garage for her car for free. But I would also expect her to buy her own food and clean up after herself, like doing her own laundry, keeping her room clean, and putting her dishes at least in the sink, if not the dishwasher. I wouldn't expect her to cut the grass or shovel snow. The thought of even asking her to do this already gives me a headache. Now I'm getting texts from both my sisters telling me that I'm a horrible person and should open my home to this. That it's unreasonable to expect a 19-year-old to spend 2 hours on the bus every day and yada yada yada. Part of me feels guilty because I could move my office and workspace down into the basement, but I can't afford the expense of a second person in my home without them chipping in for the bills. Nor will I lock away my cats in their home. I mean, it's your house and it's your rules. I don't think you're really asking too much. $250 a month is a steal, honestly. Even if she doesn't have a job, I'm sure mom can afford to pay $250 a month for her to stay there. All the other stuff is really very basic. Just take care of the area around you that you use. It really doesn't sound like you're asking for anything more than that. If you're doing her the favor of letting her stay in your home, the least she can do is respect it. My fiance got fired for manifesting failure. So my fiance worked at a bridal shop. She had an appointment set up at the end of the day, and the person ended up not showing up. She jokingly said, "I said I doubt she shows up, so I must have manifested this." Her coworker ran off to tell the boss. Boss pulled her aside and said, "You can go home." Called her later and fired her with the reasoning being, "You're manifesting my business's failure, and I can't have that. I need to let you go." I'm absolutely dumbfounded at this reasoning. She was a crap boss. Best for my fiance in the end. Okay, I'm sorry, what? We were talking earlier about employers coming up with crap reasons to fire you, but this has gotta take the cake. how do you deal with a person like this? What's next? Is she going to start firing people over their sign? Is she doing tarot card readings at home for who's bringing in the best business? Who's giving off the right vibes? This is honestly one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I agree with our original poster that your fiance's probably better off. Still, she should follow up with someone about this. If there was ever a case for wrongful dismissal, I would think this would be it. I feel like any half-baked lawyer could pull a win out of this one. My niece breaks my daughter's hand and ruins her boxing career, so I'm going to destroy her life. Here's what happened. Subscribe to Am I the Jerk on YouTube and hit the bell for notifications. My parents are going away for Christmas, so before they did, they hosted an early Christmas party at their home, which my whole family went to, including me, my husband, and our 16-year-old daughter, Laura. My sister and her daughter, Rachel, were there too. She's a year older than Laura, and they don't get along. In fact, we try to avoid them as much as possible due to the amount of times that Rachel has upset and tormented Laura. Rachel is naturally very smart and is always top of her class, and is also very pretty. While I've always been happy for her and wished her the best, these things have constantly been used to excuse her. My sister even went as far as to accuse Laura of lying because she's jealous of Rachel's looks and talents. Laura took up boxing last year and has progressed really well. She's going to compete at a higher level next year, and her coach is extremely proud of her. My sister has insisted that the boxing is nothing more than a phase, and has gone out of her way to downplay it in favor of her daughter's academic stuff. At my parents' place, Laura went to sort out some presents under the tree, and Rachel followed her. She was wearing stiletto high heels, and when Laura had her hand on the floor, Rachel stamped on it. She was in agony. We went to the hospital, and after a follow-up visit to the doctor today, Laura needs extensive physio and won't be able to box for an indefinite period. She's in floods of tears because of this. I was raging at my sister, who's so deluded that she insists that it was an accident. I'm sorry, but after years of calling Laura ugly, stupid, fat, and anything else she could think of, do you really expect me to believe that this was an innocent mistake? Rachel, for her part, put on the crocodile tears for everyone, and only her parents believed it. My husband wants to tell the police, and so do I. I warned my sister about this, and she broke down crying too, saying that her daughter's teachers have encouraged her to apply to the top universities because they think she has a good chance of getting in. And if she ends up with a criminal record, then that'll be ruined. No sympathy from me. Frankly, Rachel took something that my daughter loves away from her and left her in huge amounts of pain. She shouldn't just have her chances ruined. She should get locked up. I know it sounds awful of me, but she did an awful thing and needs to face the consequences. Laura is utterly heartbroken, and Rachel's parents won't punish her. Am I the jerk for thinking she should be held accountable? Yikes, that's pretty extreme. It's one thing to bully or call someone names or whatever. Obviously, that's not acceptable either, but this is just escalating to a whole new level. While I do think the mama bear reaction is kicking in here and wanting to take it to such an extreme in return of reporting her to the police, I do think some acknowledgement needs to be made of what Rachel did here. I would hate to see her life ruined, but she definitely needs to have her attitude checked. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibe music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below. And don't forget to subscribe. American jerk doesn't understand what Celsius means and almost ends up cooking himself alive. So this was a few years ago when me and my wife, both Mancunian, were doing a mini world tour as part of our honeymoon. We were in Iceland and had been really disappointed to find out that the Blue Lagoon is man-made and is basically just a large outdoor swimming pool of water run off from a geothermal plant. So after some light Googling, found a place about an hour-and-a-half drive from Reykjavik called the Secret Lagoon. The place is amazing, and exactly what I expected from a natural hot spring. Basically a large pond pouring with steam, a river running next to it also pouring with steam, and then a load of smaller bubbling pools of water and mini geysers that would blast water into the air every 10 minutes or so. The place is on somebody's land, and they've built a changing rooms and shower area and charge about £12 to get in. Between the pond and the river, there's a roped-off area of small, deep pools that has a sign saying, "Warning, water is over 90 degrees, do not enter at your own risk," which is probably a bad translation of "no entry, we accept no liability." Anyway, me and my wife were leaning against the side of the pond closest to this and notice a guy wander up, read the sign, then step over the rope. As he's walking up to one of the pools, the lifeguard is running over, shouting, "Stop, stop, you can't go in there!" Then American accent replies, "Whatever, buddy, I can do what I want." By this time, the lifeguard has reached him and tries to explain to him that the water's between 90 and 110 degrees, and that he walked right past a do not enter sign. To which the American responds, "No, it says enter at my own risk, so I am. And it's not very risky. It's hotter than 90 degrees in Nevada every day." This utterly perplexes the lifeguard, who has absolutely no idea what the heck the American's talking about. So I shout over, "Oi mate, it's Celsius, not Fahrenheit." Now the American looks confused and says, "I don't know what that is, but I'm going in." For reference, 90 to 100 degrees Celsius is 194 to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Then follows about 5 more minutes of arguing between the American and the lifeguard before the American obviously thinks screw this, takes 2 steps further towards the pool and goes to put his foot in. Fortunately for him, but unfortunately for Darwinism, he only manages to dip a toe before screaming in pain, hopping back to the changing room in a huff. Lifeguard sighs and goes back to his chair. What a jerk. This one's just frustrating to listen to. You're trying to explain to the guy for his own good what's wrong with what he's trying to do. But in his arrogance, he just refuses to listen. Like, buddy, we're really trying to help you out here. If you just take a second to get your head out of your butt, you might want to listen. The area is roped off and it says do not enter. The lifeguard is immediately jumping on you and saying, "Hey, you don't want to go in there. Maybe you should take some of these cues." Jerk kid thinks it's funny to prank a crisis hotline, so we learn everything about him. I work for a national crisis line that focuses on a very specific demographic of people. Anyways, I have some really great coworkers. I would say we have a very colorful group from all walks of life. The specific coworker in this tale is awesome. She happens to be my desk mate. This is her first job out of college in social and health services, and her past work includes a round of deployments in the army. This is relevant because she can come off a little strong, and when dealing with people in crisis, can catch you off guard. We're always trained to meet the caller where they are. Vocabulary, tone of voice, things like that. All of this is heard from one desk over in a smaller call center environment. We'll call coworker E and caller Jerk. At the start of this call, I'm not paying much attention. You hear E answer the phone. "Thank you for calling Crisis Line. This is E. How can I help you?" At this point, I hear some very loud screams coming from her headset and a panicked look on her face. E starts to reflect back on some of the things Jerk is saying.
It hurts so bad. I can't stop the bleeding. I just want to die."
E at this point has jumped into locating the caller's phone number and running it to find a location to send 911. By this time, it's not just me who started following the call, but other coworkers and supervisors. The call goes on for a few more minutes. We get a location and E informs the caller we're going to send EMTs to his location and ask what does he see around him. I think that must have been an oh crap moment because the caller disconnected the call. E jumps back on the phone and calls back. The kid answers and is laughing that this was all a joke and he's fine, and then swears at her and hangs up. This is when E stands up and officially names him Jerk loudly and can be heard across the office. These calls happen frequently, some not so elaborate, but this time E isn't having it. She's ticked. This kid thinks he can just call up, spew some crap, and hang up. After doing some digging, she finds this kid's Facebook. She now knows his friends who he's hanging out with at that moment because they just tagged him in a post, the school he goes to, his dog's name, and his parents' info, along with a lot of other info. E takes a deep breath and calls Jerk back. He answers the phone.
"What the heck do you want?"
"What the heck do you think I want, kid's name? You just told me you were gonna hurt yourself. You were hurting so bad and couldn't stop the bleeding. Do you think friend's name who just tagged you in a post would think it's cool to prank a crisis hotline? Or what about how parents' names would feel to know that their son is taking up someone's time that should be saving someone's life? but instead is dealing with you prank calling her. E went on to talk about his school and about how she was so worried about him that 911 was on their way. And, oh wait, is that sirens I hear in the background? Now, I don't know if there were really sirens, but that stupid little kid sucked up into a babbling little crybaby and cried about how sorry he was. E went home feeling very sure that Jerk won't be pranking our crisis line anytime soon. Needless to say, these lines are here to help people who need help. And if there's a chance you're pranking a line, you're stopping someone who might really need their life saved from getting through. Also, just because it says confidential does not mean anonymous. I wish jerk prankers realized the amount of personal information they leave behind just in a call. Our original posters sum this up nicely in their conclusion. Prank calls in general are just really juvenile, but to do it to a line like this is actually detrimental. You're taking away resources that are there to help save lives. The fact that you think it's funny to call in and pretend that you need help and take up those resources shows what a little jerk you really are. I think our original poster might have gotten through to him though. At least scared him out of any further prank calls. Maybe he'll still continue to be a little jerk, but hey, at least that's one thing down. Entitled mother tries to cut in front of me at the grocery line saying she's in a hurry, neglecting to mention that she left her kid locked in the car and it's boiling hot outside. One need-to-know detail for this story, it was very hot. It was 35 degrees Celsius, but it felt like 44. For those of you who don't know, 35 degrees Celsius is around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It's an important detail for later. So I was standing in line at the checkout at my local supermarket. I think I had in total about 10 items, some frozen goods, drinks, and snacks. I usually tend to take out one of the buds of my phone, so in case someone addresses me, I hear it. At this time, the woman at the cash register was taking care of the payment of one client, and there was one person in front of me. And then suddenly, she appeared. The entitled mother of this story. Now, honestly, she didn't look it. She didn't give off a mean vibe or anything. Even the way she started talking to me was overall nice and polite, at first. Excuse me, do you mind if I skip ahead? I'm in a hurry. Now, in general, if somebody politely asks me to do this and I don't have any urgent business of my own, I usually don't mind. This time, however, I didn't have that many groceries, so her delay would be at most a few minutes, while she was pushing a fully loaded shopping cart in front of her. So if I would have let her skip, I'd probably be in the store for another 10 to 20 minutes. So I politely decline and tell her I'll hurry as much as I can. Of course, this was a great offense. I'd not given this woman her entitlement. She blew up instantly, yelling and screaming at me that she was in a hurry, and, not kidding here, had to be home in time for her shows. Now, at this time, I'd like to point out that during this rant, she only said she had to be home in time for shows, and that they were very important to her. There was nothing else making this urgent for her. This is also important a bit later. Now, while this woman was going off, the person at the cash register went into ignore mode and just started scanning my groceries, which I loaded into a bag while the entitled mother was going on about how I was garbage and they should ban me from the store. Now, this should have been the end of it. Just turn around and go home and forget this happened. But then she said something that 1. Made me almost want to kill her, and 2. Made this a postable story. While I was walking away, just about to put the earbud back in, she yells, "If you pass by my car, tell my son he's the reason he has to wait another half hour for me." Now, I'm not an extremely smart person, but in this moment, my brain made some connections quickly. What I realized was this. 1, again, it was very hot outside. 2, this woman had been in the store for a while judging by the amount of groceries. 3, the entire parking lot of this store had almost no shade. 4, it was just about 2 p.m., so the sun was just over its peak. I rush outside and started running past cars, scanning them for kids inside. Thankfully, one of the first cars I pass is a small child laying in the back seat. This kid is pale as a ghost, sweating like crazy, and it looked like he was only half conscious. I run back inside, and to my utter astonishment, this jerk is having a conversation with the cashier while she's checking out her groceries. I grab her by the shoulders, spin her around, and almost yell straight to her face that her kid is literally dying in her car. And if she doesn't do something right now, I'm gonna smash her windows and call the cops. At first, she looked at me in complete confusion. Probably had never been spoken to like that before in her life. Then the realization of what I told her sunk in, and she rushed outside. While she went outside, a man tapped me on the shoulder and asked what had happened. I explained the situation, actually leaving out the bit at the cash register, just saying I saw the kid in the car and knew that this woman was probably the owner. He went outside, and when I came outside, the entitled mother suddenly rushed me and got in my face, saying that I was the reason she was in the store for so long and her son's current condition was my fault. Before I can even respond, the man that approached me earlier speaks up. Turns out this man was an off-duty cop and had been in the store for a while, and as such, knew that the actual delay caused by me could not have caused this. He also said he'd already called an ambulance for the kid and the cops for her. I don't know what happened to the entitled mother, but she completely crashed. She just sat down on the pavement and started shaking her head, not saying much except for the occasional sob or "not my fault." As for the ending, everything turned out okay for most parties. I stayed a while to give a statement to the cops and my contact info in case it went to court. The kid was okay afterwards, and since his mom got arrested, they called his dad or some other male family member to accompany him to the hospital. As for the entitled mother, I'm assuming she's gonna have to stand trial for child endangerment. Not sure if she'll just get a fine or jail time. Update: I was contacted by the police a few days ago. I went to the station where they went over my statement and asked if I wanted to add or amend anything I said, which I didn't. They couldn't really tell me directly what was going to happen with the mother or the family in general, but said that the standard punishment when the child's not seriously hurt or dead is usually a municipal administrative sanction. I think it's kind of sad something bad has to happen before serious punishment is handed out. I don't know what the amount of the fine will be, but as for me, it couldn't be high enough. I've not seen any of those people in the store or in the area in general, and I also don't know if they live near here or were just passing by the store by coincidence. Or maybe they're just avoiding the store. That's also possible. I know a lot of you probably hoped for something worse for the mother, but sadly, life is not fair. But at least the child lived, and let's hope the mother learned a lesson. I don't understand how people keep making this mistake. It's parenting 101. You don't leave the kid in the car, regardless of what temperature it is, regardless of how long you think you're gonna be. You just don't do it. I get that it can be a pain to try and drag them around the store while they're busy being kids. But you know what? It's a heck of a lot better than the alternative. This could have ended so much worse. And the saddest part is, this woman only cared about getting back in time to watch her shows. She was completely ignorant of what she was putting her child through. My neighbor stole my parking spot after I had just shoveled it out, so I completely covered his car in ice. It was a cold winter day. 8 inches of snow had fallen the night before, and the wind chill made it feel as though it were in the negatives, Fahrenheit. I drive an all-wheel drive SUV, so I have no issues getting out. My wife, on the other hand, drives a Prius, which slides with the smallest amount of moisture on the road. My car was down at the time, so we had to take my wife's car. I spent 45 minutes in the freezing cold shoveling that car out so we could get to the store. We were gone for 1 hour, and when we came back, our neighbor had taken the spot I'd shoveled. Our apartment complex doesn't have assigned parking, but in the winter, it's understood that if you shovel a spot, it's yours. So when I saw his car in the spot I had just shoveled, I was pretty ticked. I went inside and filled 2-gallon jugs of water, went back outside and poured them on his windshield. Rinse and repeat. I must have poured about 10 gallons of water on his car. Being how cold it was already freezing by the time I poured the last gallon on. It sat like that overnight. The next morning, I got to watch as he helplessly tried to scrape all these layers of ice off his windshield. Don't take my parking spot, jerk. This is pretty petty, I gotta say. I mean, I get that there's a shared etiquette, but I feel like it falls more to the building to just assign parking spots. It would avoid things like this happening in the future. The last thing they want is tenants getting into confrontations. Sure, this time it was just some water on the windshield. Not that big a deal. All he did was waste 5 to 10 minutes of this guy's time. But if our original poster had felt like being a little bit more of a jerk, they could have really messed up this guy's car, or gone and knocked on his door and started a fight or something. I feel like just assigning parking solves a lot of these problems. I want to go on vacation with my friends, not babysit my niece. To start things off, I, male 29, and 3 of my friends booked us a weekend trip Friday to Sunday a few weeks ago. It's my first time off since the beginning of May. To say I'm thrilled is an understatement. We plan to party all night and chill at the pool by day. I also told my brother, 43, and my sister-in-law, 39, a few weeks ago that I was really excited to stay in this specific hotel since it's on the pricier end. Yesterday, my brother contacted me that they'll be staying in the same hotel with my niece 4 at the same time as me. In the message, he wrote me that they're also really excited that I can help with my niece since I'm also there, and they can relax in the meantime. And according to them, I have nothing better to do. Don't get me wrong, I love my niece to pieces, but I really want to enjoy this weekend and not have any responsibility for anyone besides myself. I want to relax, drink, and have fun with my friends. They're staying in the same hotel, so I can't avoid them even if I wanted to. The vacation is not refundable. I'm either stuck with babysitting since her parents are really pushy and I'm the worst at setting boundaries, or my family will think that I hate my niece. I'm really frustrated. Am I the jerk if I tell them I don't want to spend time with them? They're really kind of forcing themselves on you here. You've had this planned for a while, and then all of a sudden they drop in and say they're coming too, and that you'll be responsible for the kid while they slack off on the vacation you're supposed to be there having? No. I don't blame you for having a problem with that. That's incredibly forward of them to assume. If you really wanted to compromise, you could say something like they go the following weekend and you'll look after your niece while they're gone. But you're not going to forfeit the plans you've made just because they thought they could shoehorn their way in.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, make sure to subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.